generation and manipulation, and also anti-spoofing and forgery detection. You also focus on the recognition of action and behavior, on the enhancement of the quality of image, video, and many others. In natural language understanding, and the problem is how you can actually extract knowledge from naturally written text. And this includes problems in question answering, dialogue system, knowledge-based construction, semantic parsing, and also the grounding between language and vision. So here is a list of the technical talks that you're going to see throughout the day. Later on today, this afternoon, and in the evening, we're going to have 3 of the talks by our own residents. The first is by 𝗩𝗲, and the title is Multitask Learning for Metaphor Detection with Graph Convolutional Neural Network for Word Sense Disambiguation, and this is actually a work that has appeared at 𝗩𝗶hi this year. Another talk by 𝗩𝗶H on unbalanced optimal transport, and that's a paper that has also appeared at ICML this year. And another talk by 𝗏𝗏, also one of our residents, on predictive coding for locally linear control. That's also another paper at ICML this year. And tomorrow, for the session tomorrow morning, on natural language understanding for Vietnamese. So we're going to have a talk on 𝗩𝗶H, and it's presented by one of our senior research scientists, Dr. 𝗏𝗏 Nguyên. So please join us and watch these technical talks to learn more about the research activities at VinAI Research. So moving on to the Applied AI group. So our goal here is to be able to create a top Vietnamese AI champion. So we've offered a full stack of AI technologies, leveraging the deep expertise of our research scientists. So we offer technologies in computer vision, speech recognition, natural language understanding, machine learning, and we work to add value for strategic products of Vingroup. For example, the VinSmart phones, the VinFast cars, but it can also serve a growing demand from our domestic and also international clients. So an example of a product from our applied group that has been widely deployed is our face recognition technology. So it has been used for face unlock for more than 1 million VinSmart phones. It can also be used for access control, customer identification. Now, a really unique feature about this technology is that our facial recognition technology also works when people are wearing masks. And this is really a unique advantage, especially at the time of the COVID global pandemic. Now, speaking about VinSmart phones, I'm sure that many people have heard about the latest and upcoming model, let's call the Aries Pro. So the Aries Pro comes with a very special and world-first feature, and that's called Camera Under Display, or CUD. So this allows to put the camera under the display, and hence the user can experience a beautiful screen without notches or holes. However, the moment you put a selfie camera under the display, it makes it very difficult for light to pass through the display before reaching the camera sensor. And this causes multiple optical problems. For example, lack of details, blur, flare, or simply not enough light. Now, the problem can be illustrated by the diagrams that you are looking at. Without the interference of the screen, then the camera can take a perfect, beautiful photo. However, with the interference of the screen in the middle of the camera and the subject, then the quality of the photo taken by the camera is degraded seriously, to the point that the camera is not usable. So at VinAI, we have developed a pioneering AI-based solution for this problem. It's called VCAM Crystal. So what VCAM Crystal does is that it is a really unique combination of techniques from computer vision, computational photography, and also AI deep convolutional neural network. So Crystal can take a blurry image from the sensor of the CUD camera and reverse the optical interference of the display. And it can return a beautiful photo at the end. Crystal has also been optimized to work very efficiently on the form factor of the phone. As you can see, the difference made by Crystal is quite significant and sometimes almost magical. You can take a blurry image and turn that into an image of very high quality, almost the same as the quality of the photo taken by the original camera. So let's watch and enjoy what can be created with this really cutting-edge AI technology. And I'm sorry that some of the text in the video I'm about to show is actually in Vietnamese. All right, so that's great. I hope you enjoy that. And the phone will be available on the market sometimes next month in October. Okay, so now let's go back to live in Hanoi. So I've been back to Hanoi, Vietnam for the last year and a half or so, and I've been living in the city. It's a beautiful city. The people are really friendly, very nice people. Very interesting. However, the downside of living in a very crowded city is that there's actually a lot of noise pollution. So this is a problem, almost everywhere you go in Hanoi. And in fact, noise pollution is a big problem in Vietnam. Many people in Vietnam are exposed to excessive noise, and a contributing factor is traffic, construction. Many of the major streets, junctions in Hanoi, it has noise level registered at 78 decibel, and that's unsafe. So we're going to have to ask the questions that how do people make phone calls in this environment? So at VinAI, we thought hard about this, and we came up with a solution. It's called VSound Alto. And Alto is a very interesting AI technology. It allows people to be able to make phone calls, communicate clearly, effectively, in clarity, even under extreme noisy conditions. So let's take a look at how two of our colleagues can actually make use of this really cool AI tech.
This is an ideal place. Let's go inside and calling. Hi Ling, can you hear me? Oh, I'm sitting at a coffee shop not too far from our office. It's Sunday morning, so there are quite many vehicles on the street. Sure, let me try to turn it on. All right, I just turned it on. Can you hear me now? Yes, still here. And actually, if that's the case, then you can see how amazing the technology works. I'll try to turn it off again so that you can see the difference. I've just turned it on. Yes, I'm speaking at my Max room right now, and I'm not sure if you can hear anything on your end. Yes, so you see the difference, right? So in that case, actually, before we continue the conversation, let me try to turn it on again so that we can talk normally. All right, it's on now. See the difference? So first of all, this model has been trained on thousands of hours using our data. And thanks to that, VinAI understands perfectly and deeply how human ears work. It's able to focus on what we want to listen and setting it apart from the background noise. While traditional noise suppression, like in the digital signal processing, is simply a simple rule-based system, the advent of AI has allowed us to build a much more complex. And even a greater thing is that this system runs on very low amount of energy, so it can function on any on-the-edge device, completely hardware independent. So it will work with any software plugin on the existing voice over IP system or conferencing application. You will not have to worry about anything at all when making a call. Actually, let me try to another locations. So I'm going to walk outside right now and turn on and turn off so you can see the difference.
All right, so that was very impressive. So how does it work? How is it that Alto can actually differentiate between speech and environmental noise? So in order for Alto to do this, we actually trained underneath Alto an end-to-end deep neural architecture for high-fidelity acoustic model. So the model that we trained now can have very robust noise suppression performance on both stationary and also non-stationary noise. And this is an example of how AI can actually work on device, because VSound Alto has been optimized for real-time performance. It can actually process the wave stream in real time, and it can actually do so very efficiently with very low power consumption. And furthermore, it is also platform independent. And it has many, many other potential use cases. For example, in video conferencing, in embedding with many other kinds of applications that are really essential in our today communication. Okay, so one more time, let's join us in seeing how our colleagues can actually make use of Alto one more time.
Hi Ling, I'm outside now. Can you hear anything?
Yeah.
Let me turn up so that you can recognize the difference.
Okay.
All right, how about now? Yeah, I'm standing next to the lake right now today. The lake is really beautiful, but I'm not sure if you can hear what I say. Ah, okay. In that case, let me turn on it again. Yeah, I think it's on now. You should be able to listen to me pretty clearly.
Yeah.
Imagine if people have to deal with this problem every day, taking phone calls while traveling. It must be very annoying for them.
Yeah, sure. So this technology can cancel out all the noise really well. Does it have any other unique advantage that you want to share?
To work very well on single and dual microphone, any languages, and consume very little energy. I believe those are the most unique advantages that our system has.
Yes, amazing to hear. Thank you, Khôi.
Well, so we are working very hard in order to make VSound Alto available on a Vin smartphone near you. So thank you, enjoy the show, and enjoy all the upcoming and very exciting talks at AI Day 2020.
Về hai sản phẩm AI ấn tượng đã được giới thiệu trong ngày hôm nay. Các bạn đừng quên trải nghiệm 𝗩𝗶hez 𝗦𝗃 và VSound Alto trên các dòng điện thoại sắp tới nhé.
Thank you, Dr. Hưng, and congratulate VinAI again for the impressive release products. For you guys, please don't forget to try out 𝗩𝗶hez and VSound Alto, which will be available in upcoming product lines.
Còn bây giờ chúng ta sẽ đến với phần chương trình sắp tới. Đấy. Xin lỗi các bạn, bây giờ chúng ta sẽ đến với phần video giới thiệu về VinAI.
And now there will be a short video clip about VinAI.
I am VinAI. I recognize you when you use your phone or watch TV. Check your attendance at work, and even when you are wearing a mask. I help you stand out in every photo. I make life more colorful using pioneering technology. I remove the hustle of daily life and keep the sounds of close ones. I make your life safe. I make your life more comfortable and assist you in every way.
Bật nhạc. Bật điều hòa.
Alo, cho biết tỷ lệ doanh số bán VSmart XZ3 theo từng nhà phân phối. Đúng vậy.
We are VinAI.
When I was working on my PhD thesis, and this is back in the 90s, and at a time when AI was mostly an academic curiosity, I never thought that one day I'd have a chance to come back to Vietnam and found an AI research lab right here. The creation of VinAI Research, funded by Vingroup, which is the largest company in Vietnam, is itself a very intriguing proposition. And right from the start, I want to be able to create a world-class research lab in Vietnam. And I want to focus on research excellence and also the commercialization of the best research ideas. And basically, we want to challenge the presumption that such top institutions can only be found in the first world. After a year and a half, our team have grown from 0 to now more than 100 people, with offices both in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And many of them, more than 15 of them, actually have PhDs at top universities in the world. And a lot of them actually have come back to Vietnam after spending years living and working abroad.
I think doing top-notch scientific research in Vietnam is like a promised land. It hasn't been much explored. So it takes a brave pioneer, it takes financial backing of a large organization to make it happen. When you come here, you know you work with the best minds, the best tool and the best infrastructure.
I enjoy the discussion with our residents, the brightest student in the country. I also enjoy the interaction with the talented engineer and scientists. The discussion and interaction have always led to many interesting directions and ideas from the problems I'm working on.
One of the greatest things at VinAI research that I cannot do at other research labs is that aside from doing research, I can make jokes and write poems in Vietnamese.
On some days, I focus on programming. On other days, I focus on paper reading, writing, or project planning. Still, I spend few hours per day to mentor my residents so that I can keep track their progress and provide them with advices if needed.
Back then when I was in my university, I had never actually changed a deep neural network. But after joining VinAI, I became one of the most active users of Tessera, our GPU's management platform. I kept working very hard and things got better. So I submitted a paper to ICML 2020 and my paper was accepted. And I was very happy because it was one of my biggest achievements ever.
Delivering world-class AI products made in Vietnam is an inspiring and meaningful mission that drives our team's commitment together, regardless of what role they play. VinAI is like a mix of 4 to 5 startups that share the same mindset, who dare to face the most challenging problems in its industry with disruptive approach.
So after more than a decade away from home, the biggest lesson I've learned is living in a first world country will not give me the sufficient perspective or insights to solve Vietnam problems, nor help grow the next crop of Vietnamese scientists and engineers. So here I am, in Vietnam, at VinAI, to help build more great products.
The applied team in VinAI is one of the best product development teams I ever worked with. In the space of, say, 6 months, we developed several commercial grade products which have been deployed in consumer products like a smartphone, camera, TV, as well as in large-scale deployment in hotels, in resorts, and smart cities.
Our current project combines state-of-the-art from computer vision, NLP, speech, and machine learning. It runs cross-industry from automotive, healthcare services, and consumer electronics. We will continue to explore the challenging and promising applications for AI, such as AI and IoT. With advanced technology like AI, big data, and our top talent resource, aim to develop the top quality products not only for Vingroup and Vietnam, but also for global market.
So humans are always the chief architect in any major changes in our society. And the AI revolution in Vietnam will be the work of many well-trained engineers and research scientists. And at VinAI, one of the goals is to create a high-quality AI workforce for Vietnam. And we're talking about people who can actually work on difficult research solutions for key societal problems, and then turn those solutions into useful products. And this will go a long way towards realizing our vision of being a world-leading research institute, advancing the state-of-the-art in research, and also accelerating the creation and adoption of innovative AI applications to improve the quality of life of people in Vietnam.
I am VinAI. I recognize you when you use your phone or watch TV. Check your attendance at work and even when you are wearing a mask. I help you stand out in every photo. I make life more colorful using pioneering technology. I remove the hustle of daily life. And keep the sounds of close ones. I make your life safe. I make your life more comfortable and assist you in every way.
Bật nhạc, bật điều hòa,
Alo, cho biết tỷ lệ doanh số bán VinSmart 𝗩𝗶H theo từng nhà phân phối. Đúng vậy.
We are VinAI.
When I was working on my PhD thesis, and this is back in the 90s, and at a time when AI was mostly an academic curiosity, I never thought that one day I'd have a chance to come back to Vietnam and found an AI research lab right here. The creation of VinAI Research, funded by Vingroup, which is the largest company in Vietnam, is itself a very intriguing proposition. And right from the start, I want to be able to create a world-class research lab in Vietnam. And I want to focus on research excellence and also the commercialization of the best research ideas. And basically, we want to challenge the presumption that such top institutions can only be found in the first world. After a year and a half, our team have grown from 0 to now more than 100 people, with offices both in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And many of them, more than 15 of them, actually have PhDs at top universities in the world. And a lot of them actually have come back to Vietnam after spending years living and working abroad.
I think doing top-notch scientific research in Vietnam is like a promised land. It hasn't been much explored. So it takes a brave pioneer, it takes financial backing of a large organization to make it happen. When you come here, you work with the best minds, the best tool and the best infrastructure.
I enjoy the discussion with our residents, the brightest students in the country. I also enjoy the interaction with the talented engineer and scientists. The discussion and interaction have always led to many interesting directions and ideas from the problems I'm working on.
One of the greatest things at VinAI research that I cannot do at other research labs is that aside from doing research, I can make jobs and write poems in Vietnamese.
On some days, I focus on programming. On other days, I focus on paper reading, writing, or project planning. Still, I spend few hours per day to mentor my residents so that I can keep track their progress and provide them with advices if needed.
Back then when I was in my university, I had never actually changed a deep neural network. But after joining VinAI, I became one of the most active users of 𝗩𝗶H, our GPU's management platform. I kept working very hard and things got better. So I submitted a paper to ICML 2020 and my paper was accepted. And I was very happy because it was one of my biggest achievements ever.
Delivering world-class AI products made in Vietnam is an inspiring and meaningful mission that drives our team's commitment together, regardless of what role they play. VinAI is like a mix of 4 to 5 startups that share the same mindset, who dare to face the most challenging problems in its industry with disruptive approach.
So after more than a decade away from home, the biggest lesson I've learned is living in a first world country will not give me the sufficient perspective or insights to solve Vietnam problems, nor help grow the next crop of Vietnamese scientists and engineers. So here I am, in Vietnam, at VinAI, to help build more great products.
The applied team in VinAI is one of the best product development teams I ever worked with. In the space of, say, 6 months, we developed several commercial grade products which have been deployed in consumer products like a smartphone, a camera, TV, as well as in large-scale deployment in hotels, in resorts, and smart cities.
Our current project combines state-of-the-art from computer vision, NLP, speech, and machine learning. It runs cross-industry from automotive, healthcare services, and consumer electronics. We will continue to explore the challenging and promising applications for AI, such as AI and IoT. With advanced technology like AI, big data, and our top talent resource, to develop the top quality products not only for Vingroup and Vietnam, but also for global market.
So humans are always the chief architect in any major changes in our society. And the AI revolution in Vietnam will be the work of many well-trained engineers and research scientists. And at VinAI, one of the goals is to create a high-quality AI workforce for Vietnam. And we're talking about people who can actually work on difficult research solutions for key societal problems, and then turn those solutions into useful products. And this will go a long way towards realizing our vision of being a world-leading research institute, advancing the state-of-the-art in research, and also accelerating the creation and adoption of innovative AI applications to improve the quality of life of people in Vietnam.
Chào mừng mọi người đến với chương trình VinAI Residency Program, chương trình đào tạo tài năng trẻ về AI của VinAI Research. Hiện tại, chương trình chúng tôi có 75 thành viên, trong đó có 50 thành viên là resident và 25 thành viên là intern đến từ khắp mọi nơi trên thế giới. Đối với chương trình này, mục tiêu là gì? Mục tiêu của chúng tôi là đào tạo ra những tài năng Việt Nam. Thứ nhất là những bạn muốn đi học PhD ở top 20 trên thế giới. Thứ hai là đào tạo ra những bạn Research Engineering phục vụ cho ngành software ở Việt Nam. Làm thế nào để trở thành resident của VinAI? Thứ nhất, bạn là sinh viên năm 3, năm 4 hoặc là sinh viên năm cuối hoặc đã học master về ngành toán, công nghệ thông tin của các trường đại học. Thứ hai, bạn có GPA loại giỏi, tức là 3.0 trên thang điểm 4 hoặc là 8.0 trên thang điểm 10. Thứ ba, khả năng tiếng Anh tốt. Thứ tư, bạn đã từng có kinh nghiệm nghiên cứu ở những hội nghị trong nước và quốc tế là một lợi thế. Làm thế nào để gửi đơn ứng tuyển về chương trình? Bạn có thể gửi theo hai cách. Cách thứ nhất là gửi CV của mình và thư giới thiệu kèm bảng điểm vào hòm mail job@vinai.io hoặc nộp theo form trên website www.vinai.io. Chào mọi người và hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong tương lai.
I am VinAI. I recognize you when you use your phone or watch TV. Check your attendance at work, and even when you are wearing a mask. I help you stand out in every photo. I make life more colorful using pioneering technology. I remove the hustle of daily life and keep the sounds of close ones. I make your life safe. I make your life more comfortable and assist you in every way.
Bật nhạc, bật điều hòa,
Alo, cho biết tỷ lệ doanh số bán VSmart 𝗩𝗶H theo từng nhà phân phối. Đúng vậy.
We are VinAI.
Thưa quý vị và các bạn, bây giờ chúng ta sẽ đến với phần chương trình rất được mong đợi trong buổi sáng ngày hôm nay. Cuộc đối thoại về sự phát triển của AI ở Việt Nam, tầm nhìn và chiến lược giữa những chuyên gia hàng đầu thế giới, tiến sĩ 𝗩𝗶H, giám đốc Google AI và người đang đặt nền móng cho AI ở Việt Nam, tiến sĩ 𝗩𝗶H.
And now, a much anticipated part of the event today, a conversation about AI development in Vietnam, vision and strategy between top-notch experts in AI, Dr. 𝗩𝗶H, Director of Google AI, and Dr. 𝗩𝗶H, the person who has laid the foundation for VinAI in Vietnam.
Chị Ngân Vũ, kỹ sư nghiên cứu tại Google DeepMind, sẽ là người dẫn dắt và điều phối phần trao đổi thú vị này.
Mrs. Ngân Vũ, currently a research engineer at Google DeepMind, will be the moderator for this session.
Trước khi phần chương trình này bắt đầu, chúng tôi xin có một lưu ý nhỏ. Mọi thông tin liên quan đến phần trao đổi của 𝗩𝗶H trong chương trình ngày hôm nay sẽ chỉ dành cho giới chuyên môn sử dụng với mục đích nghiên cứu và phát triển AI mà không dành cho các hoạt động truyền thông. Các nhà báo có nhu cầu sử dụng thông tin hay trích dẫn các câu nói của 𝗩𝗩h, xin vui lòng liên hệ với đại diện truyền thông của Google.
Before we start, we would like to inform that all the information in this session with 𝗩𝗏h is strictly for engineers with research purposes only. Any media inquiries regarding this should be sent directly to Google Communication Team. Thank you.
Xin cảm ơn và mời quý vị cùng theo dõi chương trình.
Hello everyone, my name is 𝗩𝗶 and I'm a research engineer at DeepMind. Today I'll also be your host for our discussion on AI in Vietnam. Being born and raised in Hanoi, I have always been looking for ways to make the field of AI more inclusive of Vietnam and Southeast Asia, which I think are underrepresented communities but are also emerging markets for the field. I'm very glad that Jeff Dean, our main guest speaker for today, would also like to support these communities, and one of the first steps is by joining in these important conversations. Jeff Dean joined Google in 1999 and is currently a Google Senior Fellow leading Google AI and related research efforts. We're both calling in today from California, the United States, and from the other side of the globe in Hanoi, Vietnam. We will also be joined by 𝗩𝗶H, the Director of VinAI Research, for more insights into the landscape of AI in Vietnam. You can find more information about Jeff and 𝗩 in the description box below. And now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jeff and 𝗩 to our conversation. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Before we start talking, I just want to say that we have about at least 800 people watching us right now. And it looks from my polls that we have people listening from all continents, including Antarctica for some reason. So yeah, I know that Jeff, you want to play, I think one of your life goals is to play basketball and soccer on every single continent, right? And now you have people listening to you from every single continent, so that checkbox is at least done. I want to start with a warm-up question for Jeff. What's your personal experience with the country, the people, and culture of Vietnam?
Sure. So, I mean, I think I've never actually traveled to Vietnam. It's always been on my list of places that I really want to go visit. So I will get there someday. I love Vietnamese food. My favorite restaurant in Palo Alto is a Vietnamese restaurant that is sort of really yummy food. And then I have a number of colleagues who are originally from Vietnam, but work in California with me. And I've been co-authors on many papers with, really great Vietnamese researchers like Quoc Ly and Thang Nguyen and other people like that. And, I think one of the things I really appreciate in my job is that I get to work with people from so many different places in the world, and we each kind of share little stories or anecdotes about like something that we experienced growing up, or what things are like in my country or your country, and it's really a great way to get to know people and get to experience other cultures, and I really relish that.
Yes, that's amazing to hear, and we really hope that we can welcome you in person in Vietnam one day.
I will go to count, but the COVID situation.
This is gonna pass soon, hopefully. And then a little bit more serious, what's your experience with AI and technology in Vietnam?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vietnamese tend to have a very strong background in math and science. I think you have a very good sort of primary and secondary education system that really prepares people well for, doing data science and machine learning and AI research. And so that's why I've, in my own job in California, encountered a number of Vietnamese who have made that their career. I think within Google, we have a number of products that are worldwide and are used by people all over the world and are very important for different countries to sort of, for example, Google Translate is a good example where the ability of AI and machine learning to improve that product over the last 5 years has really made things like the ability to translate from Vietnamese to English or to other languages dramatically better. And I think that's a really great property because it brings the world closer together. If we can all sort of understand documents or what everyone is saying, that will just make communication in the world better.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And then for the next question is actually for Hưng. I know that you had experience working in the US before, and specifically at DeepMind in Google's Mountain View campus, so actually very close to Jeff. And after leaving DeepMind, you have been leading AI Research Institute in Vietnam for about 2 years now. So could you perhaps describe the AI scene in Vietnam and compare it to your experience in Silicon Valley so that Jeff and everyone in the audience can have a better context?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. Actually, I've only been back to Vietnam for like 1.5 years, so not 2 years yet. I haven't reached that mark yet. But yeah, I think the thing that's really impressed me the most is just how talented young people are in Vietnam. I think they're obviously very inexperienced, right? But it seems to me that there's kind of like a gap between what's their career should be looking like, should look like versus basically the kind of potentials that they actually have. And with the creation of VinAI, which is I think is the first AI lab in Vietnam with a focus on fundamental research, we try to fix that problem. So I believe that you can't really give a good education, good AI education without subjecting the young talents to the really high quality research, right? And here, for example, we are running an AI residency program. We try to attract really the best talents from local universities. Of course, the AI residency program was a great model invented at Google Brain. So yeah, I mean, we able to work with the really raw talents. They're not experienced, but I was amazed by how fast they can actually catch up to concepts in deep learning, machine learning, fundamental statistics, and so on. So yeah, so I think that was something that I was really positive about. That was something very positive about my experience. Yeah. Now the people in Vietnam, they also tend to work very hard. So I thought that people in Silicon Valley, we were working very hard in Silicon Valley, but when I got back to Vietnam, it's actually a surprise that people here sometimes actually work even harder than Silicon Valley. And yeah, I think it's a country of 100 million people, there are just so many young and raw talents out there. So I think that's something that's really positive about my experience. Now the difference, obviously, it's also there's day and night difference between Silicon Valley and Vietnam. Vietnam is still a developing countries. So there are a lot of problems. Whenever you go, the problems with so we're talking about we were joking about air quality before the call, but yeah, environmental problem is one of the issue, one of the big issue in Vietnam. Air quality, everyday air quality, right? Also traffic. I mean, you kind of like you never see the road conditions in Vietnam, anywhere in the U.S. Right? So I don't know, like you want to build a autonomous vehicle. Well, I would say that the ultimate test is just try to see whether your vehicle can actually drive on the streets of Hanoi. Yeah, and so I think very different perspective in terms of how the economy works. But I think Vietnam is young and it's been growing very fast. So so I can see there's a lot of potential in the development of the country.
Amazing. Yes, I agree with you. There's a lot of potentials for Vietnam, and thank you so much for creating or leading this lab so that you can make the most use of those potentials. But as we discussed before, there's a lot of challenges for Vietnam, and the major thing that comes to my mind is in terms of resources. So we know that the development of AI actually requires a lot of resources, both in terms of labor, in terms of AI talents, and capital, right? So that's computing power or infrastructure to store data. So companies like Google and countries like the US have the best of both worlds. They have the best of both of these. While companies in small countries like Vietnam, it's a lot harder for them to compete with limited infrastructure and also suffering from brain drain, and is at risk of being left behind. So I would like to ask, what should each of us do in our unique position to stop the gap between the developed and the developing worlds from growing even larger due to AI? And I want to really highlight our different positions here. Jeff, you are a leader of an AI-first multinational technology company. And Hưng, you are a leader of the PO Vietnam with experience abroad. And I would just be representing the Vietnamese youth at home and abroad.
Who would you like to start?
Jeff, do you want to start first?
Sure. I mean, I think AI has this tremendous potential to really impact people all over the world, both in its use and application, but also in the set of people who are making contributions to that. And I think we've, as a company at Google, one of the things that we really value is how can we take technologies like AI and machine learning and democratize it so that more and more people around the world can participate in, improving, in using these approaches, in pushing the research forward. As one good example, about 5 years ago, we decided we would open source the sort of internal software libraries we were using to develop all of our machine learning algorithms as a system called TensorFlow. And TensorFlow in the last 5 years has become the #1 most popular machine learning open source library in the world. It's been downloaded like 130 million times. People in many, many organizations, many countries all over the world are making use of it to, both learn about machine learning and AI to make fundamental research advances, but also to tackle problems in their own local environment, in their communities. The things that they see as, maybe a particular problem in Vietnam that maybe people outside of Vietnam don't necessarily see as a problem, but the local Vietnamese feel is something that we should really be tackling with machine learning. I think the beauty of TensorFlow and open source software and the fact that also computational devices have become relatively inexpensive for at least the level of computation you need to solve a lot of real world problems really has helped in making it so people all over Vietnam, Southeast Asia, Africa, other parts of the world can solve problems and also can use the same tools that we're using at Google and in the US to solve these problems. I think that's what we really should do. And we also really strongly believe in publishing nearly all of our research. So we're very open. We publish, 800 or 900 papers per year that really are pushing the state of the art in machine learning and AI forward. And we want the entire community to learn from what we've been able to tackle. And we also benefit in return by having the rest of the community publish the work that they're doing. So I think this is a global community making advances on some of the most important and fundamental problems that we have today.
And then Hưng, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot of many things that Jeff said are really spot on. But I want to go back to the importance of education, because I think education is a really important way to narrow the gap between, like a developing country like Vietnam versus the first world. Since I've got back, I've thought quite a bit about why is it that the young talents in Vietnam, why is it difficult for them to receive, if not the same level of education in the US, something that's it's almost the same, right? Yeah, I think there are many problems with, I'd say with the local university systems and things like that, and we can just, use them as excuse to not doing anything. But I think there are things that can be done. So, for example, at VinAI, we are thinking about how we can actually, make the things that we use to teach our residents just, freely open to everybody in Vietnam, for example. So we're thinking about, like something like an open foundation for AI education in Vietnam. I think simple things like how to teach them, linear algebra, how to teach them basic machine learning, how to teach them the basic of deep learning. I think that's going to go a really long way, because there's so many people interested in the technologies. There's so many people, so many young, talented people are eager to learn. But it seems that something actually missing in order to help them reach the next level. And then actually, what I found is that I think research is also actually important. Somehow, like if I think the developing world don't pay enough attention to research, then the gap is just going to get wider and wider. Now we probably don't need to invest huge amount in fundamental research in countries like Vietnam, but there at least has to be something, right? It has to be people can actually show other people, okay, this is the way of how the field of AI is advancing, and this is a way of people to catch up. Yeah, but in terms of narrow the gap, I think Jeff also mentioned about problems that are unique for the developing countries like Vietnam. So I think I believe he mentioned something like translation between the English and Vietnamese, and obviously that's something that people in Vietnam care a great deal about. And yeah, then there are many other problems, local problems, right? We can actually use to motivate people here. But I think I also do hope that I think big tech companies could perhaps have to play a greater role in improving the standard of AI education universally.
Okay, I agree with you. Thank you both for your answers and for all the impacts that you made for the field, to push the field forward, not just in the US but worldwide. And for me personally, I'm just starting my career, and I would not be able to make huge impacts like you two do. But I would also like to encourage people of my age who are just starting to be aware of these problems and to just look into it, even though you're just starting, and to know what you're capable of doing, and then just like do the best to contribute. So like, for example, for me, I would not be able to make huge impact, but I'm in a lucky position where I can connect you two together and we can have this conversation, right? So that's like the small stuff that I'm doing to help contribute a little bit to this problem, to solving this problem. Okay, and it happens to be the case that the majority of the most voted questions from our audience are all about kind of how do we support the development of AI in Vietnam and other emerging markets. So I'd like to invite the authors of these questions to deliver these questions to Jeff themselves. We don't have a live audience, but this is the closest that we can bring an audience together. So yeah, for the first top voted question, could you please briefly introduce yourself and then ask your question to Jeff?
Hi, thanks for having me today. My name is Tang, and I'm currently a software engineer. A huge fan of both of you, Jeff and Hung. So my question is that what should and shouldn't be the approach to build a stable and impactful tech industry in country with limited experience and infrastructure like Vietnam? Especially as you guys mentioned before, in terms of education, since Vietnamese students generally have a very good background in math and nature science, but then language is sometimes a huge barrier.
Thank you for your question. And I just also want to mention that there's also another voted question with a lot of upvotes that on education in Vietnam.
I think, as you say, having a really strong background in basic math and science education is something that Vietnam has a great educational system for, and I think that really sets people up well for studying or sort of having careers in AI and machine learning. It's really great that there's going to be opportunities available for people who do have this kind of strong math and science background. So I do think, you know, the language barrier sometimes can be an issue because most research papers are written in English. I think people, you know, if they are interested in sort of doing cutting edge research or following the research sort of literature in some subfield, generally will be well served by having a good command of especially written English. I think the approach of, you know, working on education at all different levels, you know, secondary education, college level education, and then making sure that people have opportunities to go do advanced graduate study, be it in Vietnamese universities or going abroad and then coming back to Vietnam, is really going to be a key way in which a already fairly thriving ecosystem of AI and machine learning researchers who grew up in Vietnam will continue to grow and flourish. I think, you know, many countries are sort of seeing similar approaches, and they believe that having strong education and then having local talent work on the most advanced problems is the way to go. I kind of agree with Hung that having some set of people doing fundamental research is going to be really important in building a good, strong research ecosystem. That's the kind of thing that will bring people who maybe have gone abroad to study back to Vietnam to also continue their careers there. I think a lot of countries are seeing that, where now more and more people are returning to their country of origin after studying abroad for a while. So I think, you know, that's certainly good. And then, you know, just exposing people to this as a potential career and letting people know that this is something where you can have a lot of impact. I think one of the great things about AI and machine learning is it's not just a computer science field, right? It's something that is going to fundamentally change and is fundamentally changing many, many fields of endeavor. So things like education and healthcare and, you know, robotics and, you know, climate science, basic science, are all being affected by the advances being made in machine learning. And I think that a really neat thing about this is that people who are interested in some of those other topics can pick up and learn about AI and machine learning and then apply it to some of these other areas. And some of the most interesting advances, I think, will be made at the intersection of, you know, fundamental problems in medical science and machine learning, or the ability to apply machine learning to educational tools, things like
Oh, thanks. Hưng, do you have like any?
Yeah, so you mentioned the language barrier, and something that we are hoping to be able to help here at VinAI as well. So yeah, I mean, which is, you know, this is just still at a brainstorming stage, but when we talk to a group of, you know, research scientists and also residents in our lab, and you know, we just, you know, say, okay, you know, like, you know, what if we just localize, you know, a lot of the great teaching materials that's already there, right? In many, you know, excellent open course, and by, you know, localization, you know, perhaps, you know, very good subtitle for the video lectures, or even having someone to actually teach the same materials in Vietnamese, right? I think perhaps the slides, you know, and the reading materials, probably English is probably fine, because I think people can, to some extent, read English better than they can listen, right? But yeah, I mean, things like, you know, having people to, you know, teach the same materials in Vietnamese. Now, you're going to have to, you know, in order to have to run a proper online courses, you're going to have, you know, tutors and, you know, people who can actually, you know, help the students along, and that communications can also be in Vietnamese, right? So I think a lot of that would go a long way. And of course, and now that you know, we thought that far, and now we ending up with the problem. So how are we going to scale this, right? So so we're thinking about perhaps adopting some system like, you know, Coursera or edX, but, you know, try to localize it for Vietnamese market. And I think everybody, you know, what I mean is every other developing countries can perhaps try to do the same, right? And there's no shortage of really great material these days on the web, but the organization of how to make it, you know, more widely available for, you know, different countries, I think that's still a problem.
Thank you for the sorry. Oh, thank you for the answers. It's really detailed. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you,
Thank you for joining us. Great. Goodbye. And can we have the next question, please? Would you like to introduce yourself and ask your question?
Hello, Jeff. Hello, Hưng. My name is Phong. I am a visiting researcher in 𝗩𝗂, based in Montreal, Canada. And I also running a small AI lab in Hanoi, Vietnam. So my questions today is I would like to ask for your advice on what do you think would be a good ratio for fundamental and applied research in Vietnam? The reason I ask this question is because there's many companies in Vietnam cannot afford to have fundamental research like Google or VinAI. Can you?
Sure. I mean, I can jump in. I'm sure Hung will have thoughts as well. I mean, I think any sort of research endeavor that you're operating generally has this problem of what should the mix of research be in terms of things that are maybe a little bit nearer term, a little more, you know, are more likely to pay off. You know, you're reasonably sure this will work out in a year or two or whatever. Versus something that is, you know, more fundamental, might take 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years to sort of really pay off. There's no certainty there. And I think you kind of want to manage the set of things that are being worked on in a small research lab or a large research organization as a portfolio. So you kind of can view them as investments into things that you think have some probability of paying off, and that if they succeed, will have some reasonable set of outcomes. Now, obviously, because it's research, many of these things you can't predict very well. And so that's part of the the beauty of trying to figure out what are the things you should be working on, either individually or as a small group or as a larger organization. But I think having some fundamental research that you think is both difficult and challenging and will really advance the field in some way, I think you should never be working on things where if the best possible outcome happens, there's really no real practical impact. It's sort of like, okay, great. I think you really want to be tackling problems that are fundamentally important and that are going to make a big leap forward if you're able to make progress on the problem. And so that, I think, is a good lens by which to think about how do you want to work on problems in your career. Maybe you're not, but like an early stage student should be thinking about problems that they're excited about, that they think are important in the world, and that will then, have the ability to make improvements in whatever topic that you undertake. So that's kind of how I view it. It's not one answer or the other. It's a mix of things, and some of the fundamental investments or fundamental research will take longer to pay off and may have less probability of success, but if it does pay off, it will be important. And so that's kind of what you're balancing against versus things that are a little bit shorter term and more likely and more applied.
Great. Thank you, Phong, for joining us today. Hưng, do you have any comments that you want to add on?
I think Jeff had some really great idea, and I would say that that ratio probably shouldn't be 0, right? And then I would also add that over time that ratio tends to get smaller if you're funded by a private company, because there's always pressure, more pressure for you to make shorter and shorter impact. So it's something that you want to watch out for. And then the moment when you have to run both a research group and also the apply and commercialization group, which is what I'm doing here at VinAI, then I mean, you can see immediately there's a tendency for the two groups to drift apart, and if they do drift apart, then that's bad, because that's not the best way to make use of the resource that you are given, right? So one of the things, as someone you can actually oversee both two groups is to see opportunities very early on for the research group to make impact on the applied side, so that the applied side can actually appreciate, okay, these guys, they don't just sit there and writing papers all day, and I think having the visibility on the product side and be able to identify problems. That problem, you give it to the research side, they will save you a great amount of pain and time and yeah. So at VinAI we are able to did some of that early work, and then the two groups are usually gel together quite well. Well, until now, right? Still very early on in the game, but.
Yeah, I will say one more thing about this, which is, sometimes fundamental research leads to big advances that then have lots of different potential applications. But sometimes in working in a slightly more applied problem, you end up identifying something that is a fundamental research problem that is going to be important. And so it's really a two-way street where feedback about the fundamental research kind of improves lots of things, and then some of the recognitions of things we can't yet do, but that would be important to improve an applied setting, actually can lead to fundamental research sort of roadmaps and agendas.
Great. Thank you, Jeff and Hưng, for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And then could we have the next question on, please?
Hi everyone, my name is Làng. I'm currently a data analyst at Postclick in San Francisco, and I'm also a co-host at podcast .com with Ngong. So today I have a question for our panel, is that what is your vision of AI in emerging markets like Vietnam? And what are the meaningful problems that we can harness the power of AI to solve?
Yeah. I guess I'll go first. But I feel like there's so much potential for AI in so many different problems in the world, especially ones that are sort of really ones that affect more developing markets and countries like Vietnam. I think the potential of using AI to make much better healthcare decisions for everyone, and often having a really well-developed healthcare system is something that many countries are sort of still working on. And I think AI and machine learning can actually make tremendous advances where you can take sort of expert opinions where most people would not get access to those experts and train machine learning models to replicate the effectiveness of an expert in many, many different areas of medicine, and then have those decision-making models be used in basic care in lots of places. As one example, we've been doing work in Google Research and our Google Health organization in a problem called diabetic retinopathy, which is a disease of the eye. And really, it's a side effect of people who are at risk for diabetes. And there's about 400 million people around the world that should be screened every year for this. And in many places in the world, especially in places like India or Thailand, there aren't enough ophthalmologists to actually look at these retinal images and diagnose this in time. And so people, even though this disease is very treatable, it's something where people often suffer kind of full or partial vision loss before they're diagnosed because of this lack of doctors to do the screening. And so we've actually been working with a couple of networks of Indian eye hospitals, and are now also working in a deployment in a couple of districts in Thailand to deploy this machine learning model that we've trained that is now not just the quality of an ophthalmologist, but the quality of a retinal specialist, which is someone who has many more years of advanced training in this, and to actually use that model to do screening of patients. And this is something that I think is a great example where if we take this and deploy it in all places in the world that it should be deployed, all of a sudden we'll have much better healthcare outcomes through machine learning. And I think things like educational tutoring and things like climate and weather prediction and flood forecasting are all examples where machine learning is really going to benefit people all over the world, and maybe even disproportionately in developing markets. So I'm pretty excited about all the opportunities in the world.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Zhang, for joining us. And I would like to move to another question. It's anonymous, but it's also kind of related to our topic at the moment, which is, do you think Google should open an engineering office in Vietnam, given our large pool of talented and hardworking developers?
Yeah, I mean, I think Google has quite a number of offices all around the world, and we're constantly evaluating, should we open more of them, and if so, where? And I think, as the questioner asks, or states, because of Vietnam's, strong background in, math and science, you have a number of relatively young engineering student population, and I think that's a hallmark of some place where we might consider in the future opening an office. You have good weather, people like to live there. And I think, it's definitely a place where we might consider it. We don't have any plans at the moment, but I do think it would be on the list of places we would look at.
Amazing. I really hope that it's going to come.
That would be great. Yeah. That would be great.
I will say one thing about the current kind of COVID situation is I think, we as a company, as many other people all around the world and organizations, have really had to get much better at, not all being in the same building. It's really, people are working from all kinds of different situations today. And, some aspects of that are not nearly as good as being in person, but I think we've all kind of realized that it actually works reasonably well in a lot of cases, right? Like we can have events like this where you and I are in California, Huck is in Vietnam, and it's not quite the same as being there, but it actually is pretty effective. And within our research organization, we have offices all around the world. I think research is especially good at being able to be done in lots of different offices, because it's not the kind of thing where you have a really tight deadline engineering process where you're by February 17th, you need to do this so that then the next team by February 20th can do this. But it's really a bit more about, many different sort of research efforts going on in communicating somewhat, but not quite at the level of like, this has to be done and this has to be done. And so that does tend to make it more amenable to being distributed in lots of different places.
Perfect, thank you.
That's great, Jeff. So I would say that if you could actually, have a stronger case for the strength of the talent in Vietnam, then two of members of our AI residency program actually had paper accepted at ICML this year. So they're doing very well.
Very nice.
Great. Yeah, thank you, VinAI, for helping put Vietnam onto the World Research Map. Thank you. Great. So far we've talked a lot about how we can help push the technical front of AI in Vietnam. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit, and let's talk a little bit more about the societal aspects of AI. And the first topic that I think could benefit from more attention in Vietnam is in gender diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Jeff, I know that you're a big advocate of gender diversity. In fact, I met you at Grace Hopper Conference last year when you took a few days off from work to go talk to women in the world's largest gathering of women in computing. Right? So I was really inspired and encouraged by that. So thank you for that. However, not a lot of tech leaders think like you, and I want to bring your attention to this particular article published on a pretty big newspaper in Vietnam by a pretty good machine learning practitioner. Her name is 𝗩𝗶H. And she said that a CTO of a pretty big tech company in Vietnam said that he wouldn't hire women because women are not as technically as talented as men, or not as persistent under pressure as men. So I know that these are very contentious points of debate. But regardless of whether these statistics are true, I think it's still dangerous to reduce a person to just the mean or the mode of their gender population, or in other words, to use stereotypes in these hiring decisions. But sadly, a lot of the people in the comments of the articles actually agree with these stereotypes and approve of the decision of the CTO. So I want to ask you, Jeff, why do you take a different stand, and why do you advocate for women in computing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the field of computing is something that is incredibly transformative for so many things in the world. Yeah. And you really want everyone affected by these technologies to be involved in the process of creating these technologies. And I think, I have two daughters, and my older daughter is a PhD student studying computer science, machine learning, and robotics. And, I want her to have an environment where she's welcomed, she's, accepted, her research ideas are, looked at no differently than anyone else's research ideas, certainly not because of her gender. And I think one of the things that helped shape my childhood was that I moved around a lot of the time. So I went to 11 schools in 12 years, and I lived for a year in Uganda and 6 months in Somalia, and many different places in the United States, including Hawaii and Boston and Arkansas, which are all very different kinds of places. And I think one of the things I found was that no one place or no one kind of people are better than any other. Everyone has things to contribute to the world and to different fields of endeavor. And if you're dismissing half the people in the world because of prejudice, you are basically selling yourself short, because there's incredibly talented people all over the world of all different countries of origin, different genders, different ability to speak different languages. All of these things are really, really important, that we want the people all over the world to be working on the most important and societally impactful problems. And that's why I feel it's really important for all of us in the field to be welcoming and to bring people in with different perspectives, different kinds of backgrounds. I will say one of the things that I've found throughout my career is when I work on research projects, you know, I often try to find ones where I have some of the skills for this kind of problem, but where I don't have all the skills, and where you can bring together a team of people who have different kinds of skills and expertise and perspectives on the problem, and everyone contributes, and no one of you could do this project individually because you don't have the full set of skills that are needed. And so I think that's why you really need everyone's perspective, and you know, you want more women studying computer science because it makes the field better.
Thank you. I do agree with that, and it's not just diversity in genders, right? It's diversity in other ways too, and I really hope that we could see that in Vietnam soon. And then another concern from our participants is AI threat to job security. Here are a few questions that I collected from the participants from Vietnam, and it seems that they have concerns all across the board, whether AI will be threatening to people with high qualifications or for low skills workers. Would it kind of create a gap between the rich and the poor in society? And so in the interest of time, maybe we can address all these questions by asking, do you think if AI is going to be a problem will be a threat to our jobs? And maybe actually, can AI create more jobs for society?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely have talked with lots of people around the world who are, you know, resonating with these kinds of questions. And I think the way to view this is AI and machine learning is an advanced technology, and that it can be applied to lots of problems and make it so that we can solve some kinds of problems more efficiently and sometimes with better outcomes. Often AI and machine learning are tools that are put into the hands of people and enable them to solve more interesting problems, or problems with kind of where the computer or the machine learning model does the part that is kind of repetitive and actually not as interesting an intellectual task as some of the things that humans are, you know, really good at. So I think of it as a partnership where we're trying to build things that make us all more effective and able to do more. Now, I will say there's definitely going to be shifts in what people do, because suddenly some parts of what people do in a job may be able to be automated, and that will kind of shift what someone who's doing that job, you know, maybe 70% of what they do now can be done more effectively with a machine learning model, but the 30% that they do still needs to be done, and also their job will expand to include other things that now are possible that they didn't have time or the ability to do before. I do think societies and governments need to be thinking carefully about how jobs are going to shift. So, for example, autonomous vehicles, you mentioned autonomous vehicles in Hanoi are going to be very challenging. So maybe that's not where they will come first. But autonomous vehicles will eventually be rolled out. And there's a tremendous number of jobs in the world that are related to driving, bus drivers, taxi drivers, and delivery vehicles, and so on. But I think that's going to shift what we do as a society, right? It's going to shift that. And I think as long as governments and, you know, societal fabric makes sure that people who were previously engaged in driving jobs have opportunities to develop different skills that are now much more in demand, that everything will be fine. You know, jobs have shifted for a long time. We didn't previously have airplane pilots. We had people who, you know, worked on trains. Now we have people who work on airplanes, and people move around by airplanes, and that hasn't sort of been completely disruptive. It's just been an ability for us to do more as a society.
Thank you. Yeah, I think society can still adapt as technology advances. And then,
if I could just, you know, go back to your previous question on gender, and I think it's really great that, for people like you to, become a good model for future generations. And so we have about, I don't know, maybe 10% of our AI residency program are females, and we treat them like precious stones, but it's really hard to find them, and I think I think, as you know pretty well, that the new generation girls in Vietnam, I think they need role models like you, and I think that's really important. So I think it's really great that you guys are doing something like this in 𝗩𝗶H 4.0, so that's really fantastic.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I really hope that I could help inspire some people. It's not just me. Thank you again. And then I want to switch to yet another topic I think is also could benefit from a little bit more attention in AI in Vietnam, which is ethics. And this includes fairness, privacy, security, accessibility, etc. And so here are a few questions from our participants. What are the ethical criteria upheld by Google in building AI systems? And what does Vietnam need to do to prepare for the vision of AI development with these ethical concerns in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI and machine learning are really core technologies that are not in and of themselves like great or negative, right? The things that make whether they are ethical are how you think about applying these technologies to different problems in the world. And we've been thinking about this for quite some time as we've tried to, as we have put machine learning and AI in more and more of our products and in features that we develop for our products. And I think one of the things that has helped us as a company, about 4 or 5 years ago, we started to look at these kinds of problems and try to say, well, we could do this way or this way. This way seems like it would be better in a lot of ways because maybe you would, be less biased or would treat everyone around the world in giving them similar outcomes from this model. And as we got a little bit more formalized about that, we came up with a set of principles by which we look at any given potential use of AI and machine learning in our products, and sort of look at them with respect to these principles. So these are things like, how does this AI and machine learning model affect privacy or human rights, or does it have particular kinds of bias that seem unfair and undesirable? Is it sort of something that is augmenting humans and giving them the ability to do more positive things in the world or not? And so we have 7 principles. If you go search for Google AI principles, you can see the list. But I think this sort of more formal framing of a set of ethical principles by which we look at different problems has really helped us as a company. And now we have a fairly comprehensive review process by which every machine learning related launch or development within our organization goes through this AI principles review process. We sort of look at it and we say, no, we really shouldn't do this, or this seems okay, but maybe we should test if the model is biased in certain ways, and if it is, then remedy that. And I think 2 years ago we published those principles in public so that other organizations or people or companies thinking about these issues could benefit from our own thinking about what are the ways in which we want to make sure that our AI sort of uses of AI are consistent with our ethical principles. And I think that's been very, very helpful. It's also gotten all of our engineers and machine learning researchers thinking about these issues in a similar way, and that has been helpful.
Great. I'm sure that people in Vietnam would be able to look up these principles, and then hopefully we can take that into our development process and think about it when we do AI in Vietnam. And lastly, to end this conversation, I want to switch to a little bit of the questions about personal or career development for Jeff. So we have a lot of questions like this. One of them is, I'm a big fan of your work. Your MapReduce and TensorFlow papers were inspirations for me to pursue AI and big data. So that's very similar to me. I have two questions. What are your secrets to keep producing influential research and engineering works throughout your career? What are the key habits to become a great computer scientist leader that you practice? And similarly, we have someone ask, what are some lessons learned you learned from your time designing and building software systems at Google scale?
Sure, I appreciate the question. I mean, I think there are a lot of different things that I've done throughout my career that I think are useful. So one is, you know, I feel like I'm fairly willing to dive into new problems where I don't know or have the skills, all of the skills needed to tackle the problem, and where I can work with other people sort of who have different sort of complementary skills to my own. So, you know, I don't have like a super strong mathematical background for doing mathematical proofs or things like that. But sometimes I work with people who do have that kind of more of a mathematical mindset in tackling problems. And together, you know, we often can tackle problems that neither one of us could tackle individually. And I find that one of the things that happens when you do that is some amount of your expertise kind of rubs off on them as you're working together on solving the problem, and some of their expertise kind of rubs off on you. And now you at least know kind of the right kinds of questions to ask about this other field that you didn't previously know very much about. And then maybe you part ways and go off and work on separate problems, and then you do this again with some other people. And I think this is a really good way to continue learning throughout your career and to keep kind of building the set of skills that you have. Then as you're effectively trying to build this really big toolkit around your belt. And as you do more and more problems, you know, your toolkit gets bigger, and you can kind of look at more problems and pull little bits of this and that from previous problems you've worked on, and identify connections and say, okay, well, you know, this new problem, I know how to solve a lot of it. You know, these 5 things will be really useful, and I can kind of see how they would be put together. But then this other part, I don't quite know enough about, or I don't quite see how to solve that. And so that's going to be the really hard part about the new problem. So I think those are the kinds of things that have been really helpful in my career. You know, another piece of advice I give to students is, because you want this set of connections from lots of different areas to be in the back of your mind as you're focusing on a new problem, it's often better to skim 10 papers to read 1, right? Because what you want is the rough idea of how these 10 different things that are pretty unrelated can be done, not necessarily all the details, because you can always go look at the details once you recognize that these 3 things are going to be really useful for tackling this new problem. And it might even be better to read 100 abstracts than to skim 10 papers, because you want this constellation of different ideas and approaches to solving problems that you can then bring to bear to solve a new problem.
Yeah, thank you for that advice. I think it's really useful, especially for me, at least.
Oh, can I add on to that just a tiny bit? I mean, I think one of the things that I've also really benefited from is working with really great colleagues, you know, the kinds of people that you are ambitious, that you want to work together to solve some hard problem, and are also kind of fun to work with. I think one of the really most important things that you can do is to make sure that when you're working on solving problems, that you're also enjoying that. And one of the ways to do that is to surround yourself with people who you like working hard with, but also, you know, taking a break at the coffee machine and chatting about weather or whatever. And, you know, I've been very fortunate in my career to have many, many great colleagues. One of the most close colleagues I have is my colleague 𝗩𝗪𝗔𝗂 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗿, who I've worked with now for 24 years, even before we both joined Google. And, you know, we work together on lots of different problems. We've probably, you know, made 10,000 individual decisions together, pair programming at the same keyboard. He types, I put my feet up on the desk, and we work together writing code, debugging things, designing new systems, and finding someone that you can work really well together is a really, I think, important aspect of how do you, enjoy work and make progress on multiple problems.
Thank you. I can attest that I have a very good experience working at DeepMind and Alphabet in general. And I'm sure that the experience in VinAI is also the same.
There was some great advice, Jeff.
Awesome. We only have a few minutes left, so could we go through quickly the rest of the Q&A? We have a lot of great questions. So yeah, we would just quickly go through some of the very interesting questions from the Q&A. And I guess we already answered. So what would you work on if you were just starting your career in AI today?
Well, I would probably first take a machine learning class. Unfortunately, when I was going through university, there weren't really a lot of machine learning classes. I didn't take any. But I'm generally most excited about the kinds of things where you're working on fundamental research, but then also seeing it through and applying it to really important problems. And so I think the opportunities in healthcare and in using machine learning to improve our understanding and ability to improve climate science are going to be really transformative in the world. And I think those kinds of things are very motivating for me personally. So.
Yeah. Perfect. We're about to be out of time. So do you want to go through all these questions quickly, or should we just end this early?
I don't know. However you want to do it.
Okay. I don't think we have a lot of these opportunities, so I'm sorry that we're going to have to go over time a little bit, but let's try to go through these questions quickly.
Perfect.
We don't have a lot of opportunities like this. Okay, so fire question. Which machine learning applications are you personally most excited about?
That's the one we just did, I think. Isn't that the one we just did?
No, we just did another one.
Oh, really? That was the one I answered.
It's all good. Okay, so beside AI, what are some other technological trends that are most interesting to you?
I guess obviously the development in genetics and genomic information seems pretty interesting. That's been a field of tremendous advances in the last 10, 15 years. I think our ability to create reusable space vehicles is going to be pretty interesting. And more recently, I've gotten interested in urban planning. So I've been reading a bunch of books about how to design cities to make them more livable and more effective for the people who live there. How can you make it so people like more places and don't drive and these kinds of things. There's a lot of interesting things there.
Okay, perfect. Next fire question. What motivates you to work every day?
I think I got into computer science because I felt like it was a really great discipline where you can tackle really important problems and where a relatively small number of people can have really a lot of impact on the world, because software has this amazing quality that you can solve a problem and then all of a sudden millions or now billions of people can benefit from the solution to that problem that you've created, because you can replicate it for no cost, basically. And I think that's what motivates me, is how can I find new and interesting problems that I think will sort of improve people's lives in some way. And sometimes that's, how can I make it easier for software developers to do something that they couldn't do before? Sometimes that's more product-oriented things where maybe we can improve the quality of translations or search results and affect 1 billion people tomorrow. That's what's exciting.
Amazing. Next quick one. What's your favorite dad joke? I'm really curious about this one.
Oh, I don't know. Put on the spot. I do like dad jokes. If you search my Twitter feed, I tend to try to make some dad jokes there.
Okay, we'll do that. And then last one, how can you surpass the feeling of struggle when you're learning something, some new piece of technology or just a novel knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is really important when you're diving into a new area is to make sure that you have kind of the right material that is at the level that is good for you to pick it up quickly. Actually, I mentioned that often you want to bring together people who know different things than you do and work together on a problem. I find this is actually really effective at teaching you new material, because the people you work with often have a lot of expertise in that other area and you know almost nothing. But they can sort of assess at what level you are in learning about this new thing. And they can give you, exactly the right level of information. It's almost like you're working together, but they're also your private tutor in, statistics or, computer vision or whatever it is that they know that you don't. And they can say, oh yeah, convolutions are super important. You should go read this paper. And you're like, oh great, I don't know what those are, but I'm gonna go read that paper. And then you come back the next day and you're like, okay, I read that paper, that seems pretty cool. And then you have a bunch more questions. And then they can sort of, in a very directed way, give you just the right next step. So I think we all know that personalized tutoring is really effective in sort of earlier education, but it's also true in sort of more specialized fields and more advanced research topics, where getting someone who knows what you know, knows what you don't know, and can give you the right kind of next spoonful of goodness is a really good way to learn things.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answers. These are all really interesting, but I'm sorry that we're gonna have to cut now. This has been a very interesting conversation, and Jeff, I really hope that one day we can welcome you in person in Vietnam, and then people in Vietnam could probably interact and ask more of these questions to you. Do you have any parting thoughts or anything you would like to say to the audience before we say goodbye?
First, I want to say thank you very much for the great questions and for moderating this and for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to people in Vietnam and elsewhere. I'm sorry I couldn't come in person this summer as I was planning to do due to COVID, but I will get to Vietnam at some point. And Hung, thank you for also participating, and NB, thank you so much.
Thank you. And Hung, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to say, thanks a lot again for making this happen, and that was really fantastic to have a chance to just chat with Jeff.
Amazing. Thank you both for being here, and goodbye. Great. So our chat with Jeff Dean has come to an end. I want to note that this discussion is for the interest of students, engineers in Vietnam about AI, and none of this discussion could be quoted or repurposed for any other purpose. There will be more discussion with other amazing speakers to come today, actually. If you'd like to learn more about AI in Vietnam, please feel free to check out AI Day 2020, organized by VinAI Research. And the link to this event will be displayed at the end of this live stream and also in the description box below. Thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for paying attention to the very lively and interesting session with Jeff Dean and Ngan. We're now entering the second part of the event today, AI, the catalyst for change in Vietnam.
Mở đầu cho chủ đề số 2 là tiến sĩ 𝗩𝗶hez𝗔𝗜 trưởng nhóm nghiên cứu tại 𝗩𝗶H sẽ có phần thuyết trình với chủ đề phát hiện vật thể và dự đoán chuyển động dựa trên dữ liệu raster ứng dụng cho xe tự lái an toàn.
The opening speech of this session will be delivered to you by Dr. 𝗩𝗵 𝗔𝗲, Machine Learning Tech Lead Manager of 𝗩𝗶ဖိＨ𝗔𝗫. He will bring us a very stimulating presentation about raster-based detection and motion prediction for safe self-driving.
Các bạn thân mến, các bạn đang theo dõi chương trình, hãy gửi câu hỏi cho diễn giả và chương trình của chúng tôi theo chủ đề mà bạn quan tâm tại link dưới đây: bit.ly/AI Day Live Questions. Ba chiếc điện thoại VinSmart Joy VinAI Limited Edition sẽ thuộc về ba chủ nhân là người có câu hỏi được like nhiều nhất.
Alo.
Các bạn đang theo dõi chương trình, hãy đặt câu hỏi cho chúng tôi theo đường link dưới đây: bit.ly/AI Day Live Question. Ba chiếc điện thoại VinSmart Joy 3 VinAI Limited Edition sẽ thuộc về ba chủ nhân là người có câu hỏi được nhiều like nhất trên nền tảng nhận câu hỏi của chương trình. Đừng quên nhập họ tên và email của các bạn kèm với câu hỏi để ban tổ chức có thể liên lạc với các bạn.
AI Day 2020 is now happening and we are ready to take your questions. Submit them to our speaker and panelists in AI Day 2020 at bit.ly/AI Day Live Questions. The owner of top 3 questions that get most votes on our app will be the winner of 3 VinSmart Joy 3 VinAI Limited Edition. Don't forget to enter your full name and email address so that we can contact you in case you win.
Vâng, xin mời các bạn đến với phần trình bày của tiến sĩ 𝗩𝗵 𝗔𝗲.
And now let's come to the presentation by Dr. 𝗩𝗵 𝗔𝗲.
Hello, my name is 𝗩𝗵 𝗔𝗲, and I am a staff autonomy engineer and tech lead manager at 𝗩𝗶ဖိＨ𝗔𝗫, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I would like to thank the audience for coming to my talk, and many thanks to the organizers of the AI Day for giving me the opportunity to share my team's work with you today. I am extremely happy to be able to discuss these topics with the AI researchers in Vietnam, and I very much hope that for the next year's event, the global situation will improve, and that we will be able to meet in person in your beautiful country. My team is focused on motion prediction, a critical part of a self-driving system. And in this presentation, we will discuss some of our efforts on raster-based prediction, and also shortly discuss some of our novel detection models. This is the result of work of many people at ATG, across a number of teams and locations. Here I list by name folks that are co-authors on the papers that we'll discuss. However, there are many more engineers, developers, scientists that contributed in one way or another from the prediction, perception, labeling, infrastructure teams, and many others. This work would not be possible without huge efforts by all the people who contributed. Let us take a look at a typical autonomy system. The sensor data is processed in a sequence of modules, each taking previous modules' outputs as its own inputs. At the start of the pipeline, we have sensor data entering the detection and tracking modules that infer current actor state, such as position, velocity, or acceleration. Then, the prediction system takes the current state and the map, and is tasked with predicting behavior of the traffic actors, as well as the uncertainty of that behavior. These predictions are then ingested by the motion planning, which computes the most efficient and safe way to move the autonomous vehicle, or the AV as we will call it, closer to its goal. And finally, the ego plan is given to the controls system, which provides actual hardware controls to the AV in order to execute the motion plan. In the first part of this talk, we focus on the middle section of the pipeline and discuss methods for predicting future motion of traffic actors that surround the AV. As human drivers, we predict and quantify various possible behaviors for the actors in our surroundings. It is a critical component of the driving experience, which ensures that we safely interact with the other actors and get to our destination. The same goes for the AV, where motion prediction is one of the main safety critical components. For example, as shown in the figure, if we have an actor driving in our neighboring lane, we need to monitor its motion and predict how its motion might change to affect us. As soon as it starts swerving, we might consider the option that it will encroach into our path, or that it might actually continue driving straight. Depending on the probability of each option, we need to modify our own behavior to either hard brake or slow down a bit to prepare ourselves for the possible cutoff. Once the system is running online, we can see something like this. Every object that is tracked in the scene gets one or more predictions, covering various possible futures. We can see future predictions for vehicles turning and changing lanes, as well as for pedestrians and bicyclists crossing streets. The number of factors can be very large, especially when it comes to pedestrians around the intersections, as we can see in this video. Clearly, in order to be able to handle all of them in a reasonable time, we need to develop very efficient and effective motion prediction algorithms. To help us do so, we will focus on raster-based methods, which is the main topic of this talk. Here we assume access to a high-definition map, as well as the output of the existing detection and tracking systems. This data is highly structured, and it is not immediately clear what is the best way to provide it to the learning model. Using the raster-based approach, we propose to rasterize both the map elements and the detected actors in a bird's-eye view raster, thus encoding all the information about the AV's surroundings into a top-down raster image. We can have separate binary masks that encode specific map elements, such as road, intersection, crosswalks, and so on, as well as a mask encoding the perception output, as seen in the example figures. Another approach that we adopt in the remainder of the presentation is to generate a composite RGB image that will contain all this information overlaid on top of each other. With the raster image as its input, one could claim that the model has nearly all the information necessary for accurate motion prediction. However, while we might be covered on the input side, we will see that the outputs of a vanilla network are not necessarily constrained, which can potentially lead to unrealistic predictions. In this talk, we will present a spectrum of raster-based methods, ranging from fully unconstrained to nearly fully constrained, as indicated by the thumbnails in the slide. Here, constraints are synonymous to priors, and the methods differ by how much prior knowledge do we introduce and attempt to enforce. We will also see that constraints may come in many shapes and forms, and may originate from the model loss or the model architecture, or potentially from some hybrid approach. Let us first discuss a fully unconstrained raster-based method called RasterNet, which the other methods that we will learn about to build upon. As discussed earlier, the task at hand is to predict the future actor movement and the uncertainty of that movement, given the raster image encoding the actor's context. Here we can see a scene at the intersection, where the actor of interest, colored in yellow, is making a left turn. We first generate an actor-centric raster image using its tracked state, such that the actor is located at the bottom center of the image, with its heading pointing up. We can see that the map elements are encoded in the image, such as road and lane boundaries and crosswalks. The lane headings are represented in the actor-centric frame of reference, using a range of colors that are encoded as a hue value in an HSV color space, with saturation and value set to maximum. This makes the lanes whose headings are more aligned with the direction of travel more green, and the lanes going in the opposite direction more purple, thus helping the model not predict trajectories that are going the wrong way. We can see that the tracked actor past locations are also encoded in the image, seen as a faded trail behind the actors. Then, if we use this image as an input to a fully trained raster net, we can see that the predicted blue trajectory is very well aligned with the ground truth green trajectory. Note that the trajectories are predicted in the actor-centric frame, where the actor's bounding box centroid represents the origin, forward direction represents x-axis, and left-hand direction represents y-axis. To train the model, we first need to define a loss function at the prediction horizon h, where we use the L2 displacement between the ground truth xy locations and predicted xy hat. Assuming that the displacement comes from a half Gaussian distribution, the per actor loss is given as a negative log likelihood computed over all the horizons. Here, for each horizon h, we predict not only the xy values, but also sigma hat, or standard deviation that captures uncertainty of the predicted motion. This is the network architecture. We extract the raster features using a base CNN, which can be any CNN network out there. As we have additional state inputs from the tracker, velocity, acceleration, and heading change rate, we concatenate these three numbers with the raster features and process the concatenated features by a sequence of fully connected layers. Finally, we output two h values that correspond to x and y values for the h prediction horizons, as well as an additional h values corresponding to the uncertainties of for each horizon. Commonly used metrics in literature are average and final displacement errors. However, we also consider along and cross-track errors, two directions in the trajectory frame, which is also called the Frenet frame. They are defined as given in this figure, with cross-track being the distance between the predicted position and its projection to the ground truth path, and a long track being the distance along the ground truth path between the projection and the actual position. To see why is it important to separate the displacement error into these two components, we can consider the earlier example with a vehicle in a neighboring lane. If the actor continues driving straight and we make an error in the cross-track direction, that may still impact how the AV behaves, and as we might inaccurately predict encroachment when there is none. Similarly, the amount of a long track error for the trajectory that changes lanes can make a difference between AV hard braking or slowly easing on the pedals. We trained our model on 240 hours of data, and here we report the results of the ablation study, comparing to the unscented Kalman filter baseline, which simply forward propagates the actor's state. First, we compare the raster net with and without using fading to represent past states of the surrounding actors, where the state inputs are also not provided. We can see that without fading or state being provided as an input, the results are worse than the baseline. However, as soon as we provided fading, the network managed to compute its own state estimation from the raster, which resulted in improved performance over the UKF. When instead of fading, we provide the actual tracked state, we get even better results, as the network is given distilled, higher quality tracked state instead of inferring it from the raster. However, when we provide both the fading and the tracked state, we get a further boost, indicated that there is still information given through fading that the tracked state does not provide. We can also see that different choices for base CNNs make quite a lot of difference, with the results improving as we used LXNet, VGG, ResNet, and finally MobileNet v2. Lastly, if instead of just using L2 displacement, we use the likelihood as an optimization function, meaning that we also infer the uncertainties, we get the best results. This is due to uncertainty downweighting the noisy examples and reducing their impact during training. We can see the end result here. The predicted values, shown in blue, closely follow the ground truth values, shown in green. We can also see how the lane colors are changing as the actor makes the turn, which is the result of encoding lane heading in actor's frame of reference using the HSV color space, while the second shows that it very intuitively learned to pay close attention to the area in front of the actor as it makes the turn. In the previous discussion, we only considered a single output trajectory by the model, yet we know that the behavior in traffic is multimodal. For example, actor approaching an intersection can turn left, right, or continue straight, and we need to capture this characteristic of the traffic behavior. We address this problem in the work that we discuss next. As we mentioned, the future is inherently multimodal, and we want to develop a model that outputs multiple trajectories along with their probabilities. If we instead impose a unimodal architecture, even in situations where the behavior is clearly multimodal, the output may be an average of multiple natural modes, as we will see in this example. Here we have an actor approaching the intersection at time t, where the single modal model predicts the right turn, since the actor is driving in a turn-only lane. However, as the actor continues driving straight, the model gets confused and starts predicting a mix of the turning and straight modes, resulting in less than ideal prediction that goes off-road. On the other hand, the multimodal model would ideally handle this situation better and predict two modes, one turning right and one going straight, along with their probabilities. At time t, the turning probability is higher as the actor is in the turning lane, but as they continue driving, this quickly shifts to favor the going straight trajectory, as you can see in the two right figures. So how do we train such a model? We fix the number of trajectories to some value m and use basically the same raster-net architecture as before. The difference is, however, that instead of a single trajectory, we now output m trajectories and their probabilities that sum to 1, which are initially random, as the model parameters are also initialized randomly. Let us denote the ground truth trajectory as tau gt and mth output trajectory as tau m. Then, once we output m trajectories during training, we find which one is closest to the ground truth and incur L2 or log likelihood loss on only that one trajectory. Here we need to define what clones actually means in order to compute the winning trajectory, where we can use either the trajectory that has the smallest L2 displacement, in which case mode 2 in the example would be assigned, or the smallest angle with the ground truth, in which case mode 1 would be assigned. To compute the probabilities, we assign a label of 1 to the winning trajectory, and all others are assigned label 0, and compute the cross-entropy loss between the predicted and assigned labels. Then, the total loss is a sum of the regression and the classification losses, where the regression loss is applied only to the winning mode, and classification loss is applied to all the modes. The trained model is able to produce very diverse modes, which differ to some degree depending on the value of m. In this example, we run inference on the same test example using 4 different models, with m ranging from 1 to 4. We can see that unimodal model predicts a trajectory that is a mix between straight and turning trajectory. The model with m equals 2 separates this mode into 2, giving much higher probability to the straight mode. Increasing m to 3, we can see that the left turning mode also appears, which is assigned the lowest probability. Finally, for m equals 4, we can see that the highest probability straight mode gets split into 2, the slow and fast moving one. It is clear that with every increment of m, the model starts focusing on the next highest probability mode that is still not covered. However, for urban scenarios, we found that usually 3 modes gives reasonable results. Here I wanted to show one more result that is not commonly reported in the literature. The average displacement error or final displacement error results are usually reported over the entire test data. However, it might be much more useful to report these metrics separately for turning and going straight scenarios. Usually, turning scenarios cover less than 10% of the data, while we are actually mostly interested in those cases, as that is where the interesting behavior and interactions happen, for example, in the intersections. In the table, we can see that the proposed multi-trajectory predictor gives very different results on the 3 trajectory modes, where the turning modes usually have nearly 2 times larger error. Note that the aggregate metric here is nearly the same as the one reported just for the straight going scenarios, and the signal on the other modes is completely lost, as you can be seen in the overall and straight columns. Reporting aggregate metrics over the entire test data may give a somewhat skewed view of the model performance, and that is something to consider for future research. Note that the method is easily extendable with any additional data that we may have. For example, if we have turn signals for the actors, we can simply provide that as an additional number to the state vector. By doing so, we can get much earlier turning predictions, as seen in the first figure, where with the turn signal inputs, the turning trajectory has the highest probability the entire time, which is not the case when no turn signals are provided, which is shown in the second figure. We have seen how explicitly modeling for multimodality improves the model predictions. However, there are many other priors and constraints in the scene that impact the motion of traffic actors. In our next work, we explore how to make use of novel GAN architectures to improve the prediction performance, presented a few weeks ago at the KDD conference. So we have a familiar setup, and given an actor's current and past states, as well as a scene context image, we want to predict the actor's future trajectories. We want the predict trajectories to be compliant with the road geometries in the scene, referred to as being scene compliant. For example, in this scenario, the car is unlikely to go straight into opposing lanes from a left turn only lane. And we would like to train a model that could reason about such scene compliant predictions. One way to do so is to manually define a loss that would penalize suboptimal behavior. For example, in our earlier work, we used an off-road loss that resulted in an extra loss incurred when the prediction is not scene compliant. Here we associated an actor to a lane and defined as scene compliant all the lanes that follow. Then, during training, we apply a gradient that pushes all off-road waypoints back to the nearest on-road location. This already resulted in better predicted motion. However, it does require a modeler to manually define which losses we care about. Question is, can we avoid this manual step and have the network learn the loss by itself? Many previous works try to use conditional GANs for this purpose and learn a loss that would help generate realistic trajectory predictions. The generator corresponds to a raster net, using a CNN to extract features from the raster image and concatenate them with features from the actor's past motion. It then generates trajectory predictions based on the extracted features. The discriminator follows basically the same architecture as the generator. It takes in a trajectory, either from the generator or from the ground truth, and predicts whether it is true or fake. The two networks are trained jointly with the GAN loss, and the generator will learn to predict more and more realistic trajectories with the supervision from the discriminator. However, there may be some important limitations with the traditional GAN-based approaches. In order to combine the scene context features with the trajectories, which are represented as arrays, the discriminator needs to flatten its scene context features and concatenate them with the trajectory embeddings. Doing this will lose a lot of spatial information, as the image and trajectory features are not in the same space, making it very hard for the discriminator to tell whether a trajectory is scene compliant or not. To address this issue, we propose a new GAN architecture for trajectory prediction called SC-GAN, short for scene compliant GAN. SC-GAN uses the same generator network as in the previous works, but with the novel scene compliant discriminator. The scene compliant discriminator removes the discrepancy between image and trajectory representations by transforming the trajectory represented as arrays into the raster space. In particular, it uses a novel differentiable rasterizer module to rasterize each trajectory waypoint into a 2D occupancy image in a differentiable manner. This converts the input trajectory into a sequence of 2D images. We then stack these images with the scene context image along the channel dimension. After this transformation, the input of the discriminator becomes a multi-channel image, where map elements and predicted trajectories are fully aligned in the raster space. Finally, the discriminator network doesn't have to learn how to align images and trajectories, as is required in earlier work, but simply needs to decide if this resulting image is true or fake, where we employ the DC-GAN architecture. Next, let us discuss the differentiable rasterizer module in a little bit more detail, which transforms the waypoint XY into a 2D occupancy grid in a differentiable manner. For each cell in the grid, we first compute a displacement vector from the waypoint XY to the cell ij, and we call it delta ij. Then we set the value of each cell as a density of a 2D Gaussian distribution evaluated at this delta ij. So you can imagine if a cell is close to the waypoint position, it will have a high density, and if it's further away, it will have a low density. The covariance of the Gaussian distribution is set as a diagonal matrix, controlled by a sigma parameter that controls how widespread the densities are in the rasterized image. One important property of the differentiable rasterizer is that the gradient of each cell with respect to the waypoint coordinate xy is well defined, allowing the gradients to flow back through the cell values to the waypoint coordinates. And the direction of the gradient is aligned with the direction of the displacement vector, which means that the waypoint will be either dragged towards or pushed away from the cell based on the gradient values. In the paper itself, we showed that the proposed method outperforms state-of-the-art baselines when it comes to scene compliance. Here we show some example cases where our SC-GAN model has more scene compliant predictions than the best baseline. Each image represents the scene context image, and the black curves are the overlaid ground truth and predicted trajectories. The first figure shows the ground truth. The second figure shows the predictions from the baseline concat scene GAN, and the third figure shows the predictions from our SC-GAN model. The baseline is similar to previously proposed social BiGAT method that flattens and concatenates the scene context features with the trajectory embeddings. In this case, the actor is turning left from a left turn-only lane, and we can see that the baseline unrealistically predicts the actor to drive straight into the opposing lane, while our SC-GAN model correctly predicts the left turn. We have seen that introducing new losses, either manually or automatically defined, can help the model improve over the state of the art. Next, let us see how relatively minor changes to the model architecture can further improve the predictions and result in trajectories that are guaranteed to be physically realistic. As we have seen already, the state-of-the-art raster-based methods use CNNs to compute scene features, which are then concatenated with the motion features coming from the historical actor states. Then a trajectory decoder network predicts the actor's future trajectory from the feature embeddings, as done in the discussed raster net. Here we treat an actor as a single point with no shape or motion constraints, and the trajectory decoder only generates the actor's future positions as XY coordinates. However, when predicting vehicle motion, it is also important to predict future bounding box orientations. In order to do that, previous works often interpolated the future bounding box headings from the predicted positions. This interpolation approach may lead to inaccurate and/or kinematically infeasible predictions. Here we give two examples. In the first one, on the left, some small errors in the position predictions cause much larger errors in the interpolated headings. In the second example on the right, the positions are perfectly predicted, but the interpolated headings are unrealistic because they imply a higher rate of slip for the vehicle's rear wheels. In this work, we propose a deep kinematic model, or DKM, for vehicle trajectory prediction to address these issues. The DKM replaces the original unconstrained trajectory decoder with a novel kinematic decoder. Instead of directly predicting the XY coordinates of each future timestamp, the DKM predicts the future vehicle kinematic controls, which are accelerations and steering angle for each future time interval. In order to guarantee that the predictions are physically realistic, the predicted controls are constrained to be within the realistic bounds. A differentiable kinematic layer is then used to forward integrate the predicted controls starting from the current state. Because of this, the predicted trajectories are guaranteed to follow vehicle kinematics. The vehicle kinematic layer computes each future state sequentially during forward integration, where each state includes position, heading, and velocity. The computations in the kinematic layer are differentiable, and gradients can backpropagate through this layer. As a result, the DKM can be trained with exactly the same loss functions as the previous models, and requires only ground truth labels on the future positions, as previously done in the discussed raster net. Here we show a qualitative example that demonstrates the effectiveness of the proposal. Thus far, we discussed a system where detection and prediction modules are running sequentially and presented prediction algorithms that take detected objects as their input. However, we can also consider a different approach and design a system where detection and prediction are running jointly. A key component here is a deep model that directly takes sensor data on one side and outputs object detections and their trajectory predictions on the other. This is the topic of our latest work, where we presented multi-XNet model that within a single multi-stage architecture performs multi-class object detection and multimodal motion prediction. So in the first part of this talk, we've seen that raster-based prediction methods can achieve very good performance. Given these encouraging results, the question is how to extend them beyond just the prediction task and solve other important problems in the autonomous system, such as object detection. There are many pros to this approach, such as end-to-end training of a unified perception prediction model. This can also lead to a simpler onboard system, as now we have only one machine learned model instead of two running on a car. There are, however, some downsides to this idea, as the model is inherently more complex and could be more difficult to train and analyze. Let us see what we actually want to achieve with the multi-XNet model. Going from the sensor inputs, the goal is to detect objects in the AV's surroundings, infer their states, and finally predict their future trajectory and uncertainty of their movement. Here we illustrate how that looks like in the real world. Starting from the sensor data, the model infers object detections, as well as their future motion and the motion uncertainty. The model takes the sensor data from a large area around the AV and can handle very complex scenes. It can also handle various actor types, such as vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and infer their multimodal predictions. Here we see how we predict a low probability turning trajectory for an actor, for an oncoming vehicle actor. And while unlikely, it is still possible to observe it in a real world when we drive for millions and millions of miles. Capturing such low probability events is critical for ensuring safety on public roads, so that these tail events can be taken into account by the motion planning in order to modify ego velocity and better anticipate these potential futures. Let us take a look at the architecture that allows for processing of sensor inputs in order to obtain the intended outputs. The LiDAR and map are each represented in the bird's eye view, and then separately rasterized and processed before the learned features are combined in a common top-down frame. Given these features, each grid cell then votes for object detections and their unimodal predictions, which completes the first stage of multi-XNet. Once we have the first stage detections, we found that it is beneficial to perform a second stage refinement aimed at motion prediction, where we crop feature map around a detection and rotate it so that the heading is pointing up, which is commonly referred to as rotated the region of interest. Note that the predictions from the first and second stage can both be used in the final system, depending on the latency requirements. For example, because the second stage predictions incur additional latency cost, the system can use the first stage predictions for some actors and only run the second stage for actors where this refinement is deemed important. The loss we optimize is a combination of detection and prediction losses, computed differently for background grid cells, where there are no labeled actors, and for foreground cells, which contain traffic actors. For T0, we predict existence probability of an actor, as well as their position, width, length, and heading. While for the future timestamps, we assume that the shape is constant and infer just the positions and headings. We also downweight losses further in the future by the constant lambda that is in the 0-1 range in order to focus on the shorter term, more relevant horizons. A specific focus of our work was on designing an uncertainty-aware loss that would capture location uncertainty of actor motion. Here we consider ideas along several dimensions. First, we decomposed the predictions in their along-track and cross-track components, motivated by the discussion on the importance of these directions from the beginning of this talk. Then we considered the assumptions of Gaussian versus Laplace noise, and finally considered two different uncertainty-aware losses, negative log likelihood and KL divergence. When it comes to the KL divergence, we defined a ground truth uncertainty with zero mean and diversity B, which is linear in the time horizon T and controlled by fixed parameters alpha and beta. These are defined separately for a long track and cross track, but as an example here, we just give the AT equations. Then we can minimize the KL divergence between this ground truth and inferred noise model. Now it might seem unusual that we defined a ground truth noise model and use it as a part of the loss function, but this actually acts as a regularizer, and we'll see that the empirical results validate this choice. We compared our method to other state-of-the-art end-to-end methods, such as SPA-GNN and two versions of IntentNet, using an open-source new scenes dataset. As detection and prediction is performed simultaneously, we computed metrics on both tasks and reported average precision on one side and displacement and cross-track errors at 3 seconds on the other, using top 1 as well as top 3 results for the multimodal method given in the parentheses. While the detection performance is roughly the same, we can see that our architecture outperforms the other approaches across various actor types. We also provide a detailed ablation study of various parts of the architecture, including inclusion of uncertainty-aware loss, second stage of the architecture, and multimodality modeling. In the interest of time, I just want to point out an interesting result, that our choice of KL divergence and the Laplace distribution over negative log likelihood and the Gaussian distribution resulted in the best prediction numbers. We have come to the end of the presentation. It is clear that motion prediction is one of the most important modules of the deployed AV system, and raster-based methods have shown state-of-the-art performance on a variety of problems. We have seen that raster-based deep methods can be successfully combined with prior knowledge about the motion prediction problem, including map and motion constraints. In addition, Joint end-to-end detection and prediction shows very promising results, reducing system complexity and improving performance and latency. While the performance of the approaches has improved significantly over the past few years, with many groups contributing great work and ideas, a lot more remains to be done. Better reasoning about the surrounding context and interactions is needed, and it is very exciting to see what the future of research brings. Thank you very much for your attention.
I am VinAI. I recognize you when you use your phone or watch TV. Check your attendance at work, and even when you are wearing a mask. I help you stand out in every photo. I make life more colorful using pioneering technology. I remove the hustle of daily life. And keep the sounds of close ones. I make your life safe. I make your life more comfortable and assist you in every way.
Bật nhạc, bật điều hòa,
Alo, cho biết tỷ lệ doanh số bán VSmart 𝗩𝗶H theo từng nhà phân phối. Đúng vậy.
We are VinAI.
Vâng, chúng tôi đã quay trở lại và tiếp tục chương trình AI Day 2020 vươn tầm đón thách thức. Các bạn thân mến, các bạn vừa xem phần thuyết trình rất ấn tượng của tiến sĩ 𝗩𝗶H𝗔𝗲 về xe tự lái, một trong những ứng dụng đỉnh cao của AI. Vậy ứng dụng AI ở Việt Nam hiện tại thì ra sao? Hiện trạng và tiềm năng như thế nào? Những câu hỏi này sẽ được trả lời trong phần thảo luận vô cùng thú vị giữa các chuyên gia nghiên cứu, đại diện doanh nghiệp startup, đơn vị sử dụng công nghệ và các nhà đầu tư. Tôi sẽ gặp lại các bạn trong giây lát và trong phần thảo luận này sẽ được moderate bởi chị Trang. And now we're back to continue AI Day 2020, Rising to the Challenges. Dear friends, we have just finished an impressive presentation from Dr. 𝗩𝗏 about autonomous driving, one of AI's highest achievements. So, what about AI in Vietnam? What is its current status and potential? This question will be addressed in the upcoming very interesting discussions among a panel made of AI experts, startup founders, technology users, and investors. Chang will see you very soon as the moderator for this session. Stay tuned.
Hi everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Chang Do. I'm a business manager. I'm a business development manager in VinAI, and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. So as we just heard a very interesting keynote about autonomous car, and what about autonomous car in Vietnam? This will be one of the topics that we will address today in our panel discussion. And we also cover other topics about AI innovation in Vietnam in general. About the panel format, we will have about 40 minutes discussion among the panelists, and then we'll have about 20 minutes to take the question from the audience. So, okay, we have a very interesting panelist today with six panelists who play totally different role in the industry. And this is our honor to welcome all of you to join this panel. First, I'd like to welcome anh Hiệp, Head of Automotive Electronic Design in VinFast, Vingroup. Anh Hiệp has spent almost 15 years in automotive industry, participate in building the very first self-driving vehicle in Vietnam. Welcome, anh Hiệp. And then next to me, we have anh 𝗩𝗶H. Anh Binh is co-founder and GM of 500 Startup, the most active venture capital in Vietnam. Welcome, anh Binh. Then from the other, from abroad and also other connection points, let's welcome anh Nguyên. Anh Nguyên is founder and CTO of 𝗩𝗶H. And before that, anh Nguyên was former CIO of Masan Group and Unilever Vietnam. Anh Nguyên actually is a legend in Vietnam IT industry who could make thousands of middle-aged aunties from urban city to countryside to manage their grocery store with the Palm device back to 20 years ago. Then we have, from another investor perspective, we have anh 𝗩𝗶H, who's a technical director at Allen Institute for AI Incubator. Anh Hà and his team is now coaching technical people who want to start up in AI. From startup point of view, then I think that we cannot find any better candidate than anh Thức Vũ, who is the CEO and co-founder of 𝗩𝗶₺ and 𝗩𝗶₺. Anh Thức Vũ is one of the most well-known Vietnamese young entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. Welcome to join us, anh Thức. And then last but not least, we have anh Sơn Hứa. Dr. Sơn Hứa is a senior research scientist in VinAI. Anh Sơn is my go-to man in VinAI. He's involved in both fundamental and product-oriented research. Welcome, anh Sơn. Okay, so we have, once again, thank you so much for joining with us, for spending your time with us. Without any further delay, we will go into the discussion right away. To begin, let's start with a warm-up question to all of you. My question is, in your opinion, what is the #1 AI application in Vietnam? Let's start with anh Binh and anh Hiệp right here in our studio.
I'm going to be a little self-serving. So I guess #1 in what aspect? So if you think about maybe breakthrough technology, ELSA comes to mind. It's our first investment in our fund. What ELSA does is uses cutting-edge speech recognition to help understand what you're saying and help you improve your English pronunciation. In terms of impact, another portfolio company comes to mind, Trusting Social. Trusting Social uses AI and machine learning to be able to take a lot of telco data, the transactional data like topping up your usage, your phone information, to be able to create credit scores for the underbanked or unbanked. And now they're they have most of Vietnam covered, and 1 in 3 consumer loans are made possible by this company.
I see. So in your opinion, this will be language processing and social scoring?
Yeah, I think in general, those two have been taking. I think they've developed some novel research as well, but I think from an ELSA standpoint, what they're doing is very, very, very difficult, and they're able to achieve this. And from an impact standpoint, being able to help people access, address financial inclusion, basically. There's very proud of that company.
Yeah, that's a good impact. What do you think, Anh Hiệp?
For me, I think maybe the traffic, because I think in Vietnam that we know that the traffic is not so good. You see the traffic in the Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City is one of the the area we can work to make it better. I think maybe China also 15 or 20 years ago they may be the same. And with the AI application, I think they have much better students right now, and I think that is the one of potential area for AI.
I see. Traffic in the application. Then we want to hear from the other panelists. What do you think, Anh Thức? What is the number 1 AI application in Vietnam?
I think I would love to look at echo country. I think the two, face scoring and kind of blending, I believe would be the biggest impact in terms of like AI application. I can add one more, which is something related to agriculture, right? So the decision on food, I think also very important because we still pretty much an agriculture country, and I think that's a very significant application there.
I see. Next to you, anh Vũ.
I should rephrase my thoughts by saying that I haven't been to Vietnam. Well, I've been to Vietnam, but I have not lived in Vietnam for a really long time. So it would be disingenuous for me to say that I know what is the best number 1 application of AI in Vietnam. But having said that, I think about AI broadly as 2 categories. One category is the type of AI applications enabled by the recent advances in deep learning across computer vision, natural language processing, and speech. The other bucket, or the other category, is more kind of traditional data science analytic type of applications. And I feel that in Vietnam, there is perhaps more potential to take advantage of data science, data analytics techniques to provide solutions to do demand forecasting, predict fluctuation in inventory, for example. So those are not the kind of high-profile, sexy applications of AI, but I think they have a lot of untapped potential, even here in the US. And the key to unlock those potentials is approaching this type of problems with a very data-driven and technology-driven approach. You have to make sure that the data is collected and clean and analyzed properly, and really understand the different requirements, the scenarios, how we can turn data into insight and knowledge to drive better productivity and business decisions.
Very interesting. And Nguyên, can you give a comment on this? Or what do you think is, in your opinion, what is the number 1 application for AI?
I think I would say that I think Vietnam is one of the best. It's the most active one in the world. What do you think is feasible more demand planning to supply planning and supply optimizations and logistics? And Vietnam is a country where certainly have most of the track. So they need a lot of help. And it's simple implementation, personalization kind of application are extremely useful for VinAI. One example, others are safety prevention, accident prevention in the factory. And this sort of computer vision application I can see is extremely useful for VinAI. But if you give me a chance to put it on perspective, I'm good confident.
Interesting. To you, Exxon, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think in my perspective, AI applications in Vietnam, I feel rather very specific. Like some example applications I know is like recognitions, text to speech or speech to text, translators or like AI camera, and I think that there are very good opportunities for those for those who want the applications. And basically, I would rather rank face recognition as one of the ongoing and potentially great impact on the one industry, on the manufacturer, and I would rank like the text-based and the speech-based applications as like probably have also opportunities to collect data from applications.
I see. So we heard that from the panelists, there's quite a large range of AI application that can be deployed in Vietnam, which is a good thing. We see that there's a lot of potential for AI. Now let's talk about autonomous car, shall we? My question to all of you: do we really need autonomous car in Vietnam?
So autonomous cars, there's definitely some positive benefits, potentially improved safety.
Yes.
Reduction of labor. But I mean, how expensive is labor here in Vietnam? So I think autonomous cars makes a lot of sense where you have countries like the US where it's very, very spacious. Where the rules of the road are pretty clear. I think that's one of the challenges for Vietnam is that you don't have these very clear rules of the road. There's a lack of maps. There's just tremendous amount of challenges there. But I think there's an opportunity when you think about mobility, the transport of people and goods from one place to another. Focusing on that where, I think as cities become more urbanized, cities in Vietnam are very, very dense. You don't have a lot of space. Making more efficient use of the infrastructure and being able to address transportation, not from an autonomous vehicle standpoint, but create this trip economy. Being able to go and not focus around car ownership, but being able to use it when you can. And it's a car ownership is very expensive. It's a big category. It's a very, very big expense to tackle. And so being able to look at trips and, I think being more efficient, there's a tremendous business around that. There's car rental, motorbike rental, leasing, there's insurance, there's at this moment.
At this moment.
I think for Vietnam traffic right now, I think a bit difficult for the self-driving vehicle to run, because that requires a more predictable environment and traffic, which we don't have in Vietnam. I think maybe in Vietnam for the short term, the application for the self-driving is more with some narrow area, like in the resource or maybe in the small city, like VinSmart, 𝗩𝗶H_𝗦𝗵, for example, and Time City. So that is more organized and better infrastructure that self-driving can run. or maybe highway. But I don't think have the self-driving running on the city right now is possible. I think so, but I think maybe for the next 5 years, maybe.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so you said you see the vision for next 5 years.
Yeah, maybe. Yes, because the technology is evolved. So.
But then before 5 years, from your point of view, we probably can do something else with mobility, right?
Yeah. Even 5 years being optimistic, I think a lot of the leading teams in autonomous vehicles, when the race started, they thought they would reach level 5 by now.
That's right.
Right, and people didn't realize how hard this problem is. I mean, look at the capital expenditures. Waymo just raised $2.5 billion, right? And this is is for the U.S., which is, again, big, wide roads. I think you can potentially cheat a little bit. You might be able to embed, like what China does, embed sensors in the road. And in areas like Eco Park where you really understand and map out your surroundings, you'll be able to achieve some level of autonomous. But getting to level 5 where you can just drop a car off in Saigon or India and have it take you anywhere, I think we're 10 years or more off. So, and it's not just the technology, right? You have to have regulations, because when
That's
these
right.
things crash, people die. And so you have a lot of these other obstacles. But until then, I think it's worthy to focus on, efficient use of transportation and mobility. And that's just, I think autonomous does work. It's just not in the case of maybe people, but maybe in warehouses, in ports and docks, other ways to be able to move goods around.
Got you. What do you think, anh Thức? Yeah, yes, please.
I think one more point I would like to add here, because when people talking about autopilot, we think about the driver can get on the car and relax and don't do anything.
That's what I think.
But it's not like that at this moment. So we're far from that.
Okay.
So normally, even for Tesla, that are pioneer in this field, we still require the driver need to pay attention and take the over control if requests. So I think maybe in short term, 3 or 5 years, the autonomous driving is more with the providing more safety requirement and safety feature. So to give more comfortable experience for the driver, I think that is more realistic. It's not like autopilot scenario we are talking about.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yes, I see.
Yeah, so I think, like for autonomous vehicles, if you want to build an autonomous vehicle in Vietnam, the cost is going to be very high. And because, like it's been said, right, the rule of the road is not clear. Roads are not well maintained, right? And so, I think it is going to be extremely difficult to, establish all this, model. I don't think, if you bring an autonomous vehicle from the US back to Vietnam, it's probably not going to move, right? Because all the vehicles is kind of like in and out right in front of the car, right? And so, it's a very different rule of engagement in Vietnam. But with that being said, I think driver-assisted autonomy is actually going to be very interesting and useful in Vietnam. Just keep people safer and help them drive better, right? So auto braking when it's getting too close to the vehicle in the front, auto parking, those things I think could be applied in Vietnam. I can see those being applied in Vietnam in the near future.
I see. Anh Nguyên, what do you think?
Autonomous car?
Yeah, you sound surprised to hear about autonomous car in Vietnam.
Yeah, it's black technology. I sort of know those. Application, if you think about saving emission, saving infrastructures, road safety, they focus on supply chain. If you do good supply chain using AI, BI, data regulation, you will save 10 million trips a year in Vietnam. Save a lot of emission. That's save a lot of lives already. And 20 years from now, I don't see autonomous car will be running on the road at all. So if we do effort in Germany, they put in place that truly help the country. Yes, I know emission, CO2 emission, road safety. Every year, every battalion people die, 1,000 people die, and that's awful. But we can do a lot of other things to save that. Autonomous car can be good to try things out. Sound fancy and fashionable to make its application. I don't see it happening.
I see. How about you, Anh Vũ? Do you see it's possible and it's happening in Vietnam soon?
I think if the question is, do we need autonomous cars in the US? The answer is resoundingly yes. Based on the investments and the efforts from Google to Waymo to Tesla and Uber. I think if you ask the same question, do we need autonomous cars in Vietnam? My answer would be yes, because I see many potential impacts, positive impacts and benefits of autonomous car technologies helping with congestion and pollution and just being more moving people and goods around. The question of what can we do with existing technology is more interesting. Right? Yes, we need autonomous cars, but what can we do now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I think the technology is still not quite ready yet. We are still have a ways to go to reach level 5 or even level 4. But I'm an optimistic person, right? And I feel that in the near term, we always be kind of overly optimistic about what technology can do. But in the long term, we tend to underestimate and pessimistic about what we can do. So I echo the comments of Anh Vinh and Anh Hiệp. We need to focus on narrow cases, looking for the sweet spot where we can solve specific problems using the current technology as of today and adapt our solution to the unique environment we have in Vietnam. So for example, it's fascinating to me how people and cars and bicycles move around on Hanoi's streets, right? So you don't have to drive very fast, right? And maybe if there's an autonomous car driving on the street of 𝗩𝗶H, right? Maybe people will recognize, oh, that's an autonomous car, and they will try to get out of the way and not get hit. So it's fascinating to think about this type of applications where we aim for narrow uses of technology and taking advantage of the unique environment that we have in Vietnam.
Yeah. We want to hear from you, Anh Sơn.
Yeah, I think I agree with Anh Vinh and Anh Thuk's points. I think autonomous car can make our streets safer, and I think that would be a very good point that we want to have from the technology from autonomous cars, like those. I think I myself, from the practical point of view, I think reaching level 5 is something that is futuristic. But if we can reach, do very good at level 1, 2, 3, then probably I think it can already make a very great impact in the traffic in Vietnam. I think from the research point of view, I think autonomous car is going to bring a lot of opportunities for people in Vietnam to do fundamental and applied research, because the traffic in Vietnam is so unique that in order to solve the problems in Vietnam, then we really need to customize the solutions, and we need the research to be done by the local research society. And I also think that we can think about not just autonomous car in Vietnam, but autonomous vehicle in general. For example, some self-driving shuttle bus, or even something that sounds impossible, like a two-wheel autonomous vehicle, but deploying in some smaller scale. So I think those could be probably more practical in the next few years. before we are able to reach level 5.
I see. Yeah.
Just wanted to add,
Yes.
autonomous trucks makes a lot of sense intercity to help with logistics, especially because the rules of the road are a little bit more clear. The problem with that, and I think it's a good idea, and I think we're going to see it here, but the problem with that is this basically wealth distribution. You go down these highways, there's businesses and towns that are just set up, kind of like in the US, just set up for the truck drivers. And so if you have an autonomous vehicle where the truckers maybe just sleep in the back and just maintaining the car, there's going to be less stops. And so this wealth distribution that trucking and logistics provides, you're going to have to address it. So with some advance, there's some considerations about how that shifts the economy.
Yeah, totally agree. I think anh Nguyên can comment for more about this because he worked for Marchand and Unilever before, and they need to use a lot of truck in their logistic management. So now if we have autonomous truck, we that really have those big organizations and also for other business. Anh Nguyên, do you want to comment here?
Yeah, I'm far more practical than the super AI, you guys. When it comes to logistics, gentlemen, we look at Vietnam, and if you put in perspective the comparison between the entire, Asia overall, except Singapore and Malaysia, where modern trade are very, very developed. Even in Thailand, at this point in time, the GDP is still responsible for 65% of the trades out there. In Vietnam, 90% of the trade is still happening around in small mom and pop stores and the wet market and so on. So now optimize that structure, optimize that supply chain using technology, using AI, using machine learning, I would say, already helps a lot when it comes to trucking and delivery and so on and so forth. So I'm not against the autonomous technology. I'm just saying there's too much to be done in the country, just like Vietnam, for that to become beneficial, whereby you can apply the same efforts and technology into supply chain, for example, which is big problem with Vietnam at this point in time. It will say it will deliver almost 90% of what autonomous car will deliver in the US, I would say. But I'm not against it. I'm just saying if I had to put a bet somewhere, I'll put a bet into supply chain optimization and logistic optimization and trucking optimization rather than try to automating the truck itself. One of my friends a couple of years ago told me that he had a crazy idea on trying to advise the government to actually dig a tunnel under the ground just for trucks only, and all the trucks are over there with fully autonomous, right? So that's a good idea. So just another crazy idea about autonomous car. It needs to have a specific infrastructure. Someone just mentioned that. Yes, it does require specific infrastructures and regulation, and I don't see that happening in Vietnam at all in the 20 years. No matter what technology, level 4 or 5 will be available around the world, just because the economy is in very different shape or form at this point in time, and different helps from technology team. I can talk a lot about application, but not in the autonomous car. I don't see that. I can see autonomous activity in the factory can be helpful, especially in the safety, operation safety, for example. But other than that, no, not much.
I see. Yes. So from all of your point of view, it seems like, yes, we need autonomous eventually, but probably it's not the case that we ourselves, each of us has an autonomous car, but there are a lot of other aspects of autonomy that we could be using the technology.
I think we need that, but in the more narrow scenario, not like in the public road that we still talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, like in the warehouse, in the plant, or maybe in the small smart city, like VinHome smart city, for example.
Okay, I agree. So, but still, back to the topic, because autonomous has received a lot of attention from all over the world, from investor to all the startup. I'm still quite curious, like why it's so difficult? What are the challenges to make autonomous come to life right now? You mentioned about the map, you mentioned about the infrastructure. Is there any other challenge?
I mean, there's capital, right? So a tremendous amount of capital just needed to get the best talent in the world working on these systems, not just around vision, but mapping and guidance. And, you know, it's a big race. And so I think, you know, I would invest in an autonomous vehicle if they had some true differentiation, something, maybe it's a component of the stack, maybe it's a specialized company, maybe, I mean, there's a lot of things around autonomous vehicles that, you know, just involve data science. So there's tools to be created, you know, just even data management tools, right? There's just big gaps when people are working with these systems. So I think, you know, focusing on this area is good because it can be used for many other sectors. But yeah, I think from a competitive standpoint, I would rather see Vietnam focus on electric vehicles, say. You know, Vietnam doesn't have the heavy infrastructure and legacy infrastructure that the US has with gas stations and repair shops. And electric vehicles are less complex, they have less components. You know, they worry about the battery and the chassis, that's it. So, and then you're reducing emissions and at the same time potentially bolting on some autonomous or safety mechanisms. But, you know, Vietnam has a chance to leapfrog right here without that big burden and adopt a newer, innovative technology without that friction.
What do you think, Anh Hiệp?
I think the difficulty is about the, you know, the technology is not, you know, get to the maturity level yet for the, you know, commercialize that one. Because I think, you know, from the technology standpoint, I think the data, you know, processing for the autonomous driving is, you know, very difficult, I think. And also, when we put that into the, you know, commercial, I think legal purpose also come in as well, because, you know, how we can, you know, handle in terms of the legal, like if it's, you know, any issue happening, you know, who take responsibility for that.
This
I
is
think
not
that
clear, right?
It's not clear, and I don't know, you know, OEM will take that one or the customer. So I think it's still gaping, you know, fuzzy area that, you know, the people still talking and haven't come up with a conclusion yet. So that's what I think the area that we, you know, seen, you know, more moving ahead. Yes. So.
Yeah. Anh Sơn, from the research point of view, can you share with us what are the challenges in developing autonomous car in general?
Yeah, I think like from the research point of view, I think like as I said, like the traffic condition in Vietnam is so unique that like if you like in terms of computer vision technology, for example, like techniques that are developed using, for example, public data sets that is captured in Europe or in US or other countries in Asia might not work well for the local roads in Vietnam. So I think one of the research problem in the like in this period is how we can actually get a good enough data set to study like the traffic condition in Vietnam and to build our like autonomous driving technologies based on that. So this is just a start, like how we can actually figure out like what works and what doesn't work by just studying those data, and then over years, then probably like when the technology can grow better and better from from this data.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So still we see the challenge from everywhere for autonomous, from technology to the infrastructure to the laws, and from data, everything's. But still, as all of you mentioned earlier, that the discussion probably in 5 or 10 years we will see something running on VSound Street in Vietnam, right? Okay. Anh Bình mentioned about that you would invest in autonomous startup. Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, I think it's hard because it's about time horizons. You're trying to time the market. You're trying to time the capabilities, of the technology, the data, the regulations, and we're still far out from that. So I'd rather invest not in a autonomous car unless there's some true differentiation in certain parts, but obviously there's opportunities all around what people need to build these things, technologies that need to be built, vision systems. So and these are things that are applicable beyond autonomous vehicles, right? You can use smart vision systems to improve, reduce defects in a manufacturing line, right? So all these things are important technologies. So I would invest, but I don't see it happening.
You, anh Vũ, you're in charge of an AI incubator. Would you invest in autonomous car startup? If you have, what is the comparison between investing in autonomous car startup and investing in some other startup? I want to hear from you, anh Vũ, and then later on we want to hear from anh Thức.
The short answer is probably no. I think just for the same reasons that Anh Vinh mentioned, it's very difficult to see the potential of a newcomer coming into this space and having a unique angle and having a unique approach to carve out a piece of this market. There's issues about timing, maturity of this market. Even technology differentiation nowadays is a very difficult thing to hold on to because competition can catch up with you really quickly, especially if you're talking about Tesla and Uber and Google. So, and broadly speaking, at AI2 Incubator, we have looked at quite a few number of startups trying to apply computer vision in a wide range of scenarios. But at the end of the day, we have not invested in any of those companies for a variety of reasons. And this is kind of related to my comment earlier about vision, language, speech can be very exciting when you think about application of deep learning. But especially here in the US, turning those